We tore through Saladas Forest Alley, centuries-old oaks and blooming bushes whipping past, while everyone traded breathless tales about the kingdom of Grandale. They claim they ripped heroes from another world, each blazing with uncanny powers to fight the Dark Lord. About a month ago the summoning happened, and the whole city hasn't stopped buzzing. Everyone's tossing out wild theories about these mysterious heroes. Can they actually slay the ancient evil? The girls jammed into the carriage's back came alive, buzzing with excitement at the thought that these might be the very heroes from ancient legends, and one girl's eyes sparkled as she drank in every word of the travelers' tales. She wasn't mistaken. Legends whisper that some among them wield two unique powers at once. Maybe each one crackles with outrageous skill, and ancient manuscripts brim with their tales. With this advantage, they'll crush the Dark Lord in a heartbeat, and when war erupts, those mere mortal traders will carve out a fat slice of the spoils. Merchants in the carts were already rubbing their hands, hungry for the profitable deals to come. Tina hung on the storyteller's every word, eyes wide and breath caught, as she pictured towering warriors who felled foes with a single sweep and noble knights willing to lay down their lives for a just cause. In her fantasies, Tina pictured the queen towering over the hall, blasting a fiery speech about preserving humanity that ignited young men's hearts and forged them into heroes. Tina knew those champions would keep the kingdom safe. She ached to meet such a person at least once, and the fierce certainty that her dream would come true someday fueled her onward, slicing through the dull, gray drag of everyday life. Miss Tina's eyes blazed. Here, anyone could mentally tap into their own ability matrix. Once, people couldn't even dream of glimpsing their true potential. There are always people itching to try it, some even traveled from far away, rushing to be the first to test that strange function, convinced they'll discover something special about themselves, their eyes blazing with anticipation. How many young souls have been smashed against reality's jagged rocks? How many hopes crumbled to dust the moment the mirror of truth ripped off its mask? Expectations betray most, and only the worthy rise as true heroes. Until just recently, Akino's Kannata was the definition of ordinary, a high schooler with no standout talents and no striking looks, just another kid drowned in the crowd. Every morning, just like everyone else, he tore through his routine shower, quick breakfast, gear up for another school day, then strode to class, tipping a polite hello to every neighbor with the air of a perfectly well-mannered kid. It's been a month since a group of high school students were summoned into the realm of Grandale. Those opening days were a living nightmare, but now they've grown used to its towering castles and rolling green hills. Since that summoning, everything's been eerily still. The Dark Lord still prowls, and his survival torments the kingdom's people and even the summoned being. Tamaki Saki shouted Kannata's name, her voice slicing through the air. She pressed him to add more onigiri flavors. They were all identical, and he scowled, pure displeasure burning across his face. She used to be the class representative and looks painfully modest, so you'd never suspect she harbors the assassin skill. In battle, she snaps into a lightning-fast, silent shadow, sliding between enemies. Out of nowhere, girls swarmed him, firing complaints. There aren't even any manga or magazines here. In their world, they'd calmly grab a fresh stack of reading every week. He froze, threw up his hands, and begged them to temper their ardor. He said, calm as a still pond, that his shop sells only bottled tea and onigiri, and he doesn't even know how to grow the market or hone his skill. Be patient. And one of the girls snapped, calling him mean. He'd had enough. Constant mockery of his skill burned him. His shop hummed with electricity, pumped cold air from the AC, and glowed under bright lights. Even the toilet boasted toilet paper and a working flush. A humming computer sat here, primed to fire off your orders the moment you typed. That knowledge ignited fierce confidence in him, because for modern people like them, that skill was pure gold, even though their choice of goods was painfully limited. Locals stream into the shop, bartering their wares for goods from another world, marveling at the local wisdom as a Kinosi Kannata beams and eagerly slips them an extra treat. They sometimes brought him exotic fruits, so survival wasn't a worry. Mid-bite of an apple, a knock sounded at the door again, and the shop owner, already used to the bell's chime as the sure sign someone had arrived, just glanced up. The so-called commoners of the third group are constantly swarmed by visitors. Kajima Shinji, Taylor, Kawasaki Ryo. Even the telephone keeps buzzing, and they grin ear to ear, gushing about the local amenities, especially the bathroom. They peered inside and froze. Tamaki was sprawled on a futon smack in the middle of the shop. When they asked what she was doing, she shrugged and said it was simply comfortable and convenient, leaving everyone baffled. Anyone would pick such an odd place to rest. The shop owner brushed Kawasaki off. No need to show off. And Ryo erupted into a frantic apology, scrambling to justify himself as his cheeks flamed crimson. He couldn't be bothered with their noise. Calm and laser focus were stitched into him, and he wasn't judging anyone now. He had to find balance in everything. You're in class one moment, then the next you blink into a place you've never seen. Welcome, heroes. Prus, ruler of the eastern kingdom of Grandale, that day Akinos finally grasped the new world. He saw the new kingdom unleash unprecedented opportunities for him, but it demanded his absolute, relentless dedication. In this world, a figure called the Dark Lord lurks. To us, he's a demon king, and he spawned monsters that unleashed terrible evil across the land. 7 states once clung to the continent. The Dark Lord's creations have already torn down 2, leaving them nothing but smoldering husks. To halt the crisis, Grandale unleashed the ancient summoning ritual that tore heroes from another world straight from the age-old writings. Centuries of secret lore buried in the royal library's dusty tomes finally proved their worth, and the outcome is now legend. All 31 classmates stood together, bound by a grave crisis. Some clung to friends, fear tightening their grip. Some peered into the unfamiliar surroundings with hungry curiosity. Some were already racing to piece together what was happening. Even the people of this world gaped. Summons normally call up 3 or 4 heroes. This time dozens answered. Kuramachi Yudo, the local elite with top grades and a striking face, shattered the silence and strode up to the ruler to force him to spill the truth. Kannata snorted, found him utterly unbearable. He barked that they were just schoolchildren and demanded, if any student wanted to return to the old world and avoid fighting the Dark Lord, would she grant that wish? The queen snapped that they couldn't afford it. When Tamaki asked why, confusion and a flicker of fear stole across her face, and the dark, dangerous secret behind the queen's decision made the village chief's voice tremble. The ruler admitted they had no magic left to pry the portal open. Only by toppling the Dark Lord could they seize that power, and maybe then weave the spell to send them home. Kannata realized the only way home was to topple this lord, not just a powerful foe, but a wall between them and their family, between them and a normal life, and there was nowhere left to retreat. Kuramachi demanded a second question, relentless to the point of rudeness, glaring even at the queen. He'd always been that nasty. He shouted that they were ordinary people. How could they possibly defeat the Dark Lord, who had rendered even the fiercest warriors powerless? The queen had said they could not worry about that. Turns out they've been granted powers the old world's people can't touch, and the ancient texts thunder about heroes with one-of-a-kind abilities that cut through the Dark Lord's defenses. She tossed out that if they simply thought about checking their status, their skills would appear. That sentence jolted Akinos Kannata. He had to know what abilities were inside him. A system window erupted on the screen, blasting that it was scanning the hero's status and confirming each of his abilities. So what's the result? He wound up with a shop. He'd been craving badass martial arts, or at worst magic, and he'd pictured a harem of elves, catgirls, and fairies. No such luck. Barely a day after the summoning, the royal palace erupted into a full-scale hero training program, and the very first task was to choose which abilities they'd wield against the Dark Lord. Kuramachi Yudo, the protagonist and perpetual thorn in Akinos Kannata's side, was bestowed 2 powers, an immortality that lets him rise from death up to 5 times, and the goddess's blessing, granting mastery of every kind of magic plus a unique special defense. Kannata seethed, every fiber of him screamed that this was unfair. Kuramachi now spearheads the first frontline squad, strong enough to face the Dark Lord head-on. Kanamorei Jun, water mage who commands roaring tides. Kanai Mayoka, healer who stitches shattered life back together. Sawano Ludi, shooter who picks off foes with unerring shots. Yukisaki, swordsman who cleaves through danger. Natori Mitsuki, shield mage who plants an unbreakable bulwark. Minazuki Yui, spearman who lunges with deadly precision. Kirishima Masaki, ice mage who freezes the battlefield solid. And Tamaki Saki, assassin who melts into shadows to strike. The second squad barrels forward, and the first group's reserves flood the breach, seizing the positions left by the wounded. Kannata landed in the 3rd detachment. It was declared incapable of combat, and wild relief ripped through him. Even his friend Sujita Yuki, the fire mage, landed in the main cast. He deceived himself he wasn't jealous at all, yet jealousy crawled in like poison and gnawed his self-confidence away. 1 month after recruitment, it began with the 3rd squad. Recruits who couldn't endure the brutal training and alien life swarmed Kannata's shop, and discussions of dire problems devolved into heated debates over onigiri. Hope flickered as the protagonist obsessed over when he'd finally topple the Dark Lord, and whether he'd even be able to face him. Tamaki Saki caught his haunted face, and a cold knot told her something was wrong. She shot to the hero's side to find out what had happened. He flinched at the sudden attention, and her raw concern hit so hard shame boiled up over his secrecy. Cheeks burning, he blurted that everyone had important thoughts, even him. They seldom wandered into his head, but when they did they etched themselves deep. She and her comrades, visitors of the 1st detachment, shouldn't be inside these walls. Their presence slammed into him like a provocation. either a bold challenge or fate's reckless experiment. Tamaki shrugged and drawled she'd only come for the blast of air conditioning, and a toilet that actually ran. She melted into the comfort, and the shop owner kept snapping at her not to sit on the table. The girl continued, I don't want to go back. Most people aren't cut out to seriously fight the Dark Lord. Campfire legends stir the blood, but facing that ancient evil face to face when you know what's demanded rips courage to shreds. What? Everyone's convinced, Akinos included, yet she swears most people aren't thrilled with what's happening, and the girl nicknamed Assassin agreed. Only a handful actually like it. Tamaki sneered that she didn't care one bit about defeating the Dark Lord. The hero asked again, half expecting a laugh, but her face went stone cold, utterly serious, a tired edge hinting she might just be worn out. If the first squad she joins fails to take him down, they're trapped here forever. No one can sit this fight out. Invisible oaths bind every one of them, so they have to win. She shot back that everything would be fine. They all had the power, then abruptly vowed to protect Kannata, and his pride shattered, leaving him feeling useless. She let a soft, sweet smile curl at her own words and stayed silent. That genuine warmth sent every worry fleeing for a heartbeat. Tamaki Saki waved her friends off and slipped into her room. Relief flooded Kannata as the crowd melted away and silence settled, and he hesitated. Should he leave the doors ajar until the others came back? There was nothing left to do. Kanamorei burst onto the scene out of nowhere and revealed their squad was down a man, Minazuki Yohei, nicknamed Spearman, the very guy who always shows up here. Kuramachi even claimed he was frantic that the boy had missed training again, and the wanted man looked completely blindsided as color drained from his face, and his eyes frantically darted from side to side. He scrambled for an excuse, apologized, and claimed he felt sick so he'd rest in the store under the cool blast of the air conditioning, and Kannata's suspicion flared at the hero's stiff, formal speech. Kanamorei grinned oddly from behind his back and said he understood this turn of events. A sly half-smile curled his lips and a cruel glint sparked in his eyes. What was he planning? He sneered and taunted. This is where the third squad's heroes gather, the little shop they use to rest and prop each other up, a shabby refuge papering over their worthlessness. Grinning, he summed it up. This place is made for scum. The water mage pressed on. Soon there will be almost nothing left here. The whole place will be swallowed by grass. 3 people shot up to block him, snapping, who does he think he is? An otaku like him can't go swaggering just because he snagged a powerful skill. Minazuki leapt in, tension crackling through him as he demanded they not be rude to the two, his hands trembling and voice quivering for some reason. A sudden wall of water slammed over everyone in the shop. No one saw it coming, not even Akinos. Then razor water arrows stabbed from every angle, like an invisible archer directing an elemental assault. What the hell, what was that? A terrified guy dove behind the cash register to dodge the next wave, while Kanamorei just stood there, unreadable and calm, watching like he was savoring the chaos he'd just unleashed. Water crashed in, lifting heroes and once neat shelf items alike, and the flood tugged like a hungry beast trying to drag everything under. No one knew how long this magical deluge would rage or how to stop it. So this was Mori's ability. Kannata knew he was strong, but not this strong. He begged the water mage to stop, but it was useless. Mori was swallowed by his spell, deaf to every plea. He had the nerve, just a worm, to challenge Kanamorei himself, a main-team powerhouse. Kanamori's smile chilled the blood, and when he slowly raised his hand, the streams of water around him surged to life with brutal force. He cackled, stunned that scum stayed scum in the other world, the very fools who dared contradict him minutes before. Amid the thunder of water and his classmates' frantic screams, a chillingly calm, utterly commanding voice sliced through the chaos. He heard it and whipped his head around, knowing no one stood a chance of surviving his performances. He couldn't pretend not to hear. Kuramachi Yudo himself was calling, and since Yudo had something vital to tell Kannata, he had to act before the water mage swept him away. They asked Kanamorei, and the instant the squad leader stepped forward, the magician snapped his hands down, and the raging elements fell obediently to his will, respect tinged with curiosity flashing in his eyes. Akinos shook himself, hacking and spitting the water from his mouth as the squad leader loomed above him and coolly called his name. Hello, Kannata, a calm voice threaded with mockery. The boy snapped his head up and spat. He hadn't expected such cruelty from his classmate. A month of silence wasn't an excuse, and Kuramachi's face stayed a stone-cold mask, not a single muscle twitching. What did he want to tell him? Yudo launched into a business-like Albi brief, his voice snapping with an oddly official edge. The listener stiffened, seeing his classmate's face yet feeling it strange and strangely familiar at once. So he actually wanted Kannata driven out of the city. The first squad leader snarled that Kannata's mere presence made weaklings abandon all grip on reality. Trouble wasn't confined to the useless third squad. members of the main squad were dashing off to Akino's shop instead of tackling serious duties. Discipline was collapsing, and Yudo stood at a loss, unable to stem this spreading epidemic of idleness. He admitted he was worried about that too, clawing to gather his scattered thoughts as they slipped through his fingers, and he couldn't deny the bitter, necessary truth threaded through them. Yudo continued, his voice ablade. To get back to their old world, they must vanquish the Dark Lord at all costs, and they have to move as one, united, unstoppable. Afterwards he sneered that Kannata's ability was not just useless but downright dangerous, that it yanked the heroes off their mission, and he ordered the shop owner to leave the city before he was forced out. Would the shop owner really be banished from the kingdom? He lunged into negotiation, clawing to keep the one thing he treasured, and told Kuramachi he understood him but needed time to think. Being suddenly hurled into an alien world crushed him, and knowing the detachment leader, mercy wasn't coming, the leader barked a laugh and told Kannata he had until morning to decide. Kanamorei smirked behind the local authority, picturing himself tossing the boy a few coins for the trip, only if the kid got down on his knees and begged. The boy replied that everything was fine. Yudo paraded his hand-picked squad, only the cream of heroes, roaring that the Dark Lord's defeat was inevitable and sneering that Kannata, branded the loser, could just relax. The shop owner couldn't escape that word, inevitable. Kuramachi said he wasn't thinking about tomorrow but the far future, already picturing what he'd do after he won and came home, how he'd save the modern world with his own hands, and Akino stared at him like he'd gone mad. Looking into Kannata's eyes, he hurled out his mad plan. Today's society allows no freedom of thought, and now, wielding unimaginable abilities and raw power, he'll return like a god and bend the masses to his will. He realized the guy had snapped, eyes blazing with a mad fire, a twisted, unnatural grin carving across his face, and he became even more unpredictable than he'd been in the previous world. Maybe this was his true form, maybe not. He only cared that Kannata get out of the city, and when Kuramachi heard Kannata had understood him, relief flared and his thin lips curled into a satisfied smile. As he strode off, he threw a haughty glance back and told him to pray for their victory over the Dark Lord, his voice dripping with arrogance like a man already clutching victory while the battle hadn't even begun. Akino's Kannata planted himself outside his convenience store, grateful just to have it, and convinced that shutting it and reopening it would put everything back in order. Tamaki looked baffled and didn't understand a word. When she heard Minazuki and the rest of her squad were in deep trouble, she sprinted over to find the store in ruins, and breathless she demanded whether Kuramachi really wanted Kannata to leave the Grandale kingdom. That was low, utterly intolerable. She vowed to confront him and lay everything bare to his face, worry carved deep into her expression. Surprise exploded across his face and pleasure warmed him, but disbelief hit like a slap. Wasn't she one of the chosen, part of the first squad with Kanamorei and Kuramachi? That would hurl her into an awkward position. He wouldn't let the first squad be dragged into this mess, and Tamaki Saki was right there among them. She fired back that in the current group of chosen ones, everyone's involvement varied. She told him that already and demanded he start listening. Everything else was fine, but Kannata didn't believe it at first. Kuramachi grinds harder than anyone in the hero training program. Alongside him are Water Mage Kanamorei, Ice Mage Kirishima, the Shield Mage Mitsuki and Saki, the swordsman. The rest, Assassin Girl included, lounge in the palace, many lately deserting training from pure apathy, while only 5 have actually stepped into the fray. At first they all soaked up every lecture like sponges. The moment the hands-on monster hunting lessons kicked off, their attitudes snapped and everyone started treating it differently. They staged a mock battle with the orcs the other day, and Kirishima, the ice mage, unleashed a storm of ice arrows that riddled the orcs and froze everyone solid with terror. Kannata said that after what happened to Kanamorei earlier, he wasn't surprised at all. She shot back that Kanamorei was worse. He took sick pleasure in dragging out kills and dreaming up the cruelest tortures, so of course she couldn't stand him. He asked her what she thought about that psychopath, and Tamaki instantly knew he meant Kuramachi. She carried more dirt on him than she wanted, but she chose to tell him. This talk could save him from a mountain of trouble. To everyone he's the picture of a perfect, hardworking student, every assignment executed flawlessly, training never missed, the palace sings his praises, his pristine mask dazzles them all, but something else simmers in the shadows beneath. She confessed she'd always clashed with him, and that lately everyone had begun to fear him, so the hero pressed again, leaning in and urging her to tell him exactly what was going on. The former class chief launched into her tale. After training, everyone went home safe, nothing odd, while Kuramachi strode straight to Crusader's quarters, and Kannata kept telling himself he must be imagining it. So Yudo spends every night alone with those gorgeous Crusaders. The hero snarls, lecherous idiot. To ease the tension, Yudo blurts that Tamaki's priorities and grievances are downright strange, and the remark throws her completely off guard. Kuramachi had become the queen's lover and was already being hailed as the country's future ruler, so Minazuki swallowed his objections. Kannata knew why fear of Kuramachi clung to him, recent events flashing through his mind. If they were wrong, they'd be branded conspirators plotting against the entire royal court's favorite and face ruthless punishment, and she admitted, voice drained, that talking to the arrogant commander of the first squad had become nearly impossible. Kanato's mind churned. After defeating Lord Kuramachi's sinister plans were already forming, while Tamaki Saki chose to relax and was already spreading a blanket on the store floor. Night thinned to the final hours before dawn. With the psychopath's ruthless grip on power, he and Kannata were bound as blood enemies forever, and the hero, haunted by the day's worries, couldn't sleep, a heavy, ragged sigh tearing from his chest. The Kinnos clung to the hope that Tamaki could jolt the 1st Division leader back to his senses, but he decided not to stand in his way, and while he hesitated, the assassin girl had already slipped into her 10th dream. Flaming arrows smashed into the shop windows with a thunderous roar, blinding flashes ripping through the room and hurling the hero into raw, paralyzing fear. The young man barreled in and shook his friend awake. At first she didn't understand what had happened. Kannata grabbed her hand and pulled her deeper into the building, squeezing it so hard her knuckles went white. Half asleep and dazed, she groped for what had happened as fog clouded her mind. He snapped that they had to pull the security footage. Those cameras probably caught whoever tried to disturb their peace. Suddenly they saw the queen explode into view atop her horse, ringed by armed guards. "This is Crusaders," Tamaki dove behind her classmate, panic crackling through her. She was painfully unprepared for this. Kannata never imagined the head of Grandale would storm in to confront him personally. The hero snapped to the truth. She'd been sent by Kuramachi to drive him out, and Tamaki scoffed, "Why complicate things like this? Who knows, maybe it was to intimidate, maybe they were counting on them retreating." A ringing voice tore across the distance, ricocheting down the corridors and sending the air into a tremor, and as it sharpened, everyone knew the Queen of Grandale, Crusade, had come to make herself known. The church branded the shop owner a heretic. Accused of siding with the Dark Lord, Kannata heard every word, and from that moment he was banished from their kingdom forever. Kannata reeled as he learned Akinos had been tied to countless horrific crimes over the past month. What kind of madness was this? When did the man who practically lived in the shop turn into a monster? Tamaki jumped to his defense, swearing he'd never do such a thing, a brazen lie that trampled every boundary, and to everyone else it looked not like loyalty but a blind denial of reality. Dozens of baseless accusations slammed into him as he bowed his head over his desk. Kuramachi had peddled pure nonsense to smear his name. How could anyone stoop that low? The queen's accusing tirade cut him off mid-breath. She barked that he must kneel and flee the kingdom at once, or she'd set him and his shop ablaze. Kannata realized he couldn't escape the horror, so he zeroed in on saving Tamaki. He jabbed a finger at the back door and barked for her to run before it was too late, and the assassin girl froze, stunned. She vowed she wouldn't abandon him here. They'd run away together. The criminal sneered that they were hunting him and warned she'd meet the same fate if she stayed. The shop owner spat that he'd simply give up, yet a choice stubbornly remained. His words fell like a lead weight as he stared around the shop, maybe for the last time. She whispered again that she didn't want this, her voice quivering like thin crystal about to shatter, fear and indecision warring in her eyes. She lowered her head, cheeks aflame, quietly reminding him of her promise. No matter what, she'd always protect him. As a tear welled in her eye, was the class chief always this vulnerable? Kannata stared, stunned. Akina reached out, tousled her soft hair and murmured, "Don't worry about anything," his warm fingers sweeping through her silky locks as if planting a seed of his calm inside her. He bargained that if they escaped and met again, he'd let her use the toilet and buy her more seaweed on a jiri. She only had to do exactly as he said. The answer punched the girl silent. She froze, jaw slack and eyes wide. She sent him packing. She showed up at the store every single day, not for perks, only because he was there. The hero tuned out the assassin girl's desperate words and flung her out the door to keep her safe. Kannata blurted out foolish vows. He'd pray their squad would beat the Dark Lord and begged her to take care until the end, so tearful Tamaki admitted she'd met a rare idiot. She forbade him to die and demanded he never forget her promise. Kannata waved a hand at her as her words seared into his mind, and he stood frozen, staring where Tamaki had run. Strange, scraping sounds erupted behind him. The guy whipped around. Akinos stepped forward, declared he surrendered and wouldn't resist, and his empty palms and open posture left no doubt he carried no weapon. They closed around the boy, blades honed to razor edges hovering at his throat, and Kannata wore a calm face while a hurricane of feeling raged inside him. The queen urged him to surrender, calling it the only wise play for a criminal. Standing with his hands raised, the hero felt the chill of her conviction. She truly believed he was guilty. Looming over him, Crusade dropped a chilling verdict. They'd most likely never see each other again. She branded him useless without a second thought. The guards shoved him out, and he staggered away with no idea where to go. The heavy door slammed behind him as the boy stumbled forward, drowning in dark thoughts and replaying what had happened. This felt unbearably unfair. Why, of all people, had he ended up useless? What had he done wrong? Twilight closed in overhead, his path still a blur, and frustration coiled in the hero's chest. He plunged deeper into the Saladas forest as darkness swallowed him, ancient trees locking their limbs into an impenetrable vault overhead, while dry leaves and brittle twigs crackled under his boots like a hollow, menacing drumbeat. This darkness devoured even the fields around his grandmother's house. Kannata scanned the blackness, a cold claw racing up his spine as if the night itself was alive and watching him. He aches to sprint back into the city this instant, but as an exile, capture will see him hauled to the pyre and burned alive. Keep this up and Kannata will turn into their class's fallen hero. At night in the forest, the faintest rustle of the trees can freeze you mid-breath. Akinos's gaze darted through the dark, ears tuned to every creak, each snapped twig and distant owls who'd hammered his heart. Then a memory slammed into him. If the shop skill lived in him, he could summon the shop anywhere with a thought, so he dared to command it to appear right then and there, and it snapped into existence, proving his instincts true. Kannata swept the store's cameras and froze. Savage beasts stalked him on every feed, each camera capturing the approaching threat, their motions in deadly lockstep, poised to pounce. Holy shit, they're closing in on him from every side. A cold clarity hit him. They were being pulled to the light, so he had to plunge the whole store into darkness now. He snapped his head around, couldn't find the switch. His breath hitched into ragged gasps and his heart slammed against his ribs. Sweat trickled from his forehead into his eyes, blurring his vision as Kannata tore through the place in a frantic search. Was he gone? Horror slammed into Akinos when he realized he owned the convenience store. He'd never once had to turn the lights off here. Was there really no switch anywhere? Maybe it answered to a clap. Kannata snapped into action. He knew he had to at least barricade the entrances. Anything was better than nothing. He began hauling boxes to the door, stacking them into a crude barricade to protect himself as best he could. How did this happen? Suddenly, he heard rustling. He whipped around and saw two bloodthirsty predators had already burst into the building, their yellow eyes blazing like twin infernos, slobber dripping from mouths that bared sinister fangs. He froze, breath held, staring at creatures that weren't the usual feral dogs or wolves but monsters, and Kannata knew he'd be finished if they decided to attack. He'd already braced himself. They'd stripped the shelves bare, devouring every last food product. Kannata only wanted them to stay away, but his hand betrayed him. He fumbled something that clattered down, and every head snapped toward him. He gulped, convinced this was the end, while the wolfish creatures snapped to unnerving alert, combing the shadows for the hero of the occasion, nostrils quivering at the faintest scent, ears pricked like radar, instincts screaming that prey was close. The search barely took a breath, and the young man found himself staring as a nightmarish beast hurtled toward him with another sprinting hot on its heels. Time crawled, and every second stretched into an eternity. The door was locked tight, giving him a sliver of time to plan his next move. Kannata didn't waste a second. His brain snapped into overdrive, racing through every possible route to salvation. Time slipping through his fingers set his nerves on edge. The first thing he saw was a fire extinguisher, kept for fires, and he didn't care what he attacked with, so relief flooded him at the sight. He ripped the pin from the fire extinguisher and trained the hose on the unwanted guests. Hey, you wolves, how do you like that? A geyser of foam erupted from the nozzle and smacked the nearest predator full in the face. The beasts flashed their fangs but dared not step forward, blindsided by Kannata's move. Confidence roared back into him. He had to press that momentum, and they'd break and scatter in every direction. Suddenly, what is that? They're plowing through the foam. Great, exactly what we didn't need. The extinguisher sputtered for 2 seconds and died. The guy kept begging it like it had a pulse. Seriously, what kind of sick joke is this? One more second and he'd be dead. Kannata realized asking wouldn't bring the extinguisher back to life, forced a brittle laugh, his shoulders trembling and his fingers still clutched around the empty canister as the sound ricocheted off the walls, horribly wrong in the hush. Cold despair clawed at Kannata as he realized he'd be the first to die here, reduced to perfect prey for the very first monsters he'd ever encountered, uselessness settling into his bones. He blew out a ragged breath and slumped against the door as hungry wolves, something like wolves, clawed at it. A fire extinguisher lay within arm's reach, and the boxes he'd hoped would save him were strewn everywhere. Mom, Dad, Cat, Mimi, they're probably worried about him right now. their faces flashed through his mind one after another, fortifying his resolve and tearing his soul to shreds. Doubt gnawed had Tamaki escaped. He conjured her face in an instant, smiling with that same hopeful light, and his heart clenched. Was she unharmed? He had to survive for his family and for her. If she suddenly discovered he'd died here, would she collapse into tears? At their last meeting, worry and a flicker of tenderness shone in her eyes. Could he be wrong? A swarm of thoughts battered his mind. They weren't particularly close, so why, in what might be his last moments, was the hero thinking about her? Maybe something deeper than friendship or sympathy burned in him, or maybe it was just a defensive reaction. Chaos collapses, and a sudden, heavy silence takes hold. He snapped to the cameras and craned to peer behind the door to check. The silence slapped him cold, wrong and ominous. After everything that had happened, suddenly no sound, no rustle. He flung the door open, and his shop slammed into view, ravaged, broken glass glittering, and food products strewn here and there, every corner bearing the brutal signatures of an alien invasion. Gone. He'd survived. Kannata shaded his eyes against the sunrise, certain the monsters recoiled from dawn's light. Every muscle screamed from tension and exhaustion, but he was alive, and that was everything. A system window slammed into view, declaring his store had leveled up. He froze, stunned. What just happened? Those weren't just voices in his head, were they? After a day that chewed him up and spit him out, Kannata couldn't tell truth from lie. The non-stop onslaught of events had nearly ripped his sanity to shreds. A flash hit Kannata. He could check his status with a single thought, so he seized the moment and did it on the spot. He gaped at his stats as his level shot up. Protecting the store had leveled him, and it hit him. That's it. He spotted a flood of new changes, additions stacked everywhere, and excitement burned in him to tear through every one. That could wait. Kannata crumpled. His face slammed into the cold marble of his shop floor as the last hours exploded behind his eyes. Battles with monsters, frantic sprints from death, desperate, clawing bids to survive. The day hurled every kind of incident at him, and the poor shop owner just wanted to sleep as tiredness rolled over him in crushing waves, and his thoughts dissolved into a hazy fog. Drowsiness slammed into him. He missed the horse's neigh beyond the window and every warning sound, while shadows coiled and thickened along the path where Mrs. Tina wandered. Too early to celebrate peace, the noise had yanked him awake. Kannata's eyes opened slowly and ignited with anger and fury, and he knew this would be his second sleepless night. What happened again? Were Grandale's knights on his tail? No way. If that were true, Kannata would already be dead, yet a dying scream was ripping through the air nearby. He planted his elbows on the table's edge, eyes razor sharp. If not them, then who? The cameras are clear, time to go sort this out in person. Kannata darted around a tree and skidded to a halt at a nearby carriage ringed by shadowy figures, the horse's ears flicking like alarm flags. It looked like bandits were attacking her. He peered closer and a horrific sight slammed into him. A man was savagely kicking another to death while his partner sat nearby and watched. Dead bodies littered the ground, and behind the carriage he spotted bags and other accomplices. Terror slammed into Kannata. He had to bolt before they spotted him, but it was already too late as the strange people swung toward him, their eyes flashing with cruel fire in the half-light. A young girl tore past, yanking their attention away from the hero. They shouted after her, but she forced herself not to look, lungs burning from the sprint and heart pounding like it might burst. Kannata spotted her and froze. She'd somehow survived. Terror was carved across her face, fresh tears glittered in her eyes, and trembling shoulders with clenched fingers shouted fear louder than any words. A brutal clarity slammed into him. He had to protect her. Fear clawed at his throat while duty screamed for action, but a choice stubbornly refused to form as panic flooded the hero, blotting out clear thought and any sober read on the situation. Helpers, he whispered, then reality hit him. He couldn't beat them alone, not with them armed. The girl kept running, each tiny step stabbing at his mind. Kannata's ears snagged on the bandits' murmur. They weren't planning to kill her. They wanted her alive to have some fun, and rage boiled in his chest as that sick truth slammed into him. Fear died and morality took its place as the young man clenched his fists, refusing to leave her in danger. He came from another world and carried a lone duty to shield the needy, even if the kingdom had banished him. Then his abilities flared back and he decided to build a shop right there. He had to cast an awkward, embarrassingly clumsy spell, but he swallowed his pride because the cause made that moment of shame worth it. Nobody expected this. Her eyes flared like torches, a fierce spark of salvation burning there, and the bandit staggered back, utterly stunned. Seizing the moment, Kannata yanked the shop's blinds open. Hearing the invitation, she hurled herself into her savior's shelter, knees trembling as she pinched off her breath to avoid drawing a single glance. The bandits suddenly registered. They had to target the legs. Only after the magazine canopy had already fallen and bows could no longer touch them, because a split-second reaction could save 2 lives. The store's safe inside, but Kannata has to pick his next move. He's neck-deep in trouble, thoughts ricochet, his heart hammers, and nothing but nightmare scenarios whirl through his head. He glued himself to the camera feeds and watched bandits trying to get inside. Confidence bled away. There were too many, moving like a trained unit and splitting into small teams to sweep the area. Kannata dared to believe the nightmare was over. Then out of nowhere, a fresh calamity erupted, and behind the hero, a mysterious stranger stood stunned, at a loss for how to thank him. He, in turn, finally drank her in, every detail slamming into him like a revelation. Her wide eyes glittered with happiness, yet the shock of what had happened still stuck to her. She hovered there, unsteady and bracing as if a threat might still be lurking, and Kannata watched, struck by how pretty she was. He even blurted she might be an elf, then snatched the idea back, no time to waste. Black-clad strangers were hammering inside, terror flaring across the girl's face again, and he had to act now. They speared a hole in the canopy, the tear gaping in plain sight and on every camera. His computer flashed that he'd be up against as many as 3 bandits, so he braced himself for the fight. Kannata bristled with fury. What else could anyone expect? Those fire shutters wouldn't hold for long in a situation like this. The kind woman fumbled, nervously tugging his jacket as if trying to prove it was real. He spun around and caught the raw hope blazing in her eyes. Those puppy eyes could melt anyone, and if he were a slick, superpowered hero, he'd have swooped in and saved her flawlessly ages ago. But reality is a cold, merciless thing. The little girl trembled for comfort. Kannata wrapped his arms around her shoulders, locked eyes with her, and vowed he'd draw the bandits' attention the moment they broke in so she could escape. He swore she had nothing to fear while he stood there to protect her. She blinked, surprised by his courage, cheeks flushing as a shy smile bloomed. She couldn't help but be pleased. Glass cracked as the bandits' shouts ripped through the room, snapping them around. 3 scoundrels were already inside, demanding the runt. That's what they called Kannata, show himself, and they kicked and smashed everything in sight. They fumed at the unseen. What kind of building is this? Enough games. One of them zeroed in on a closed door and jabbed a finger, signaling the others that the victim and her rescuer might be hiding behind it. Kannata barely had time to register their approach before a sword sliced into the door beside them. The guy dropped into a crouch to stay unseen for at least a beat, and raced to decide his next move. Kannata's memory snapped. He'd driven off the ferocious monsters yesterday with a fire extinguisher. He seized it, poised to blast again, and with the criminals stunned, the girl could bolt to safety. He just unveiled his brilliant plan to her when a chill seized him. He suddenly realized something was wrong. The computer camera screamed a warning. Another bandit prowled just outside the store. Are you kidding me? This ruins everything. A choice roared inside him. Strike the attacker to buy her a getaway, but then he'd lose any chance to detain those inside. His original plan's rigidity didn't sit right. They had to think fast. An axe blade slid through the door crack as the bandits snarled they'd rip their throats out, and the girl huddled in the corner, fighting back tears. A bolt of realization slammed into him. The fire alarm could be the key to saving the girl. It would blindside the attackers, and for him, it was the only real shot at breaking free. The sound of a strange, new technology ripped through Grandale, terrifying everyone. Old-timers shook their heads and whispered about witchcraft, while youngsters pressed faces to windows, wide-eyed and hungry as they hunted down the source. He snatched a box of matches, struck one with a sharp rasp, held the tiny flame inches from the ceiling device, certain the bandits would be caught off guard. Kannata was right. Every one of them stood utterly stunned and terrified. When the water slammed down, they froze, clueless where to run, and the bandits scrambled like cornered beasts, thrashing for any way out of the rising flood. The bandits gasped magic and hit the floor, some stunned, others skidding on suddenly slick tiles, eyes bulging as their weapons tore free and hung in midair, obedient to an unseen force. That racket will yank the bandits off their mission and hand Kannata, pressed beneath the table with the pretty stranger, a slim chance to bolt. Maybe someone will hear and come charging to help. A savage roar ripped through the air, freezing the boy and girl. Could a black wolf have gotten in here? I couldn't risk another reckless move and scare this nice lady any further. Kannata's muscles tightened, suspicion flaring. Were these the very monsters that stalked us last night? Time to silence the fire alarm. I flipped it off and the rushing water cut out in an instant. The room calmed, then calmed again. This place was noisy enough already, so give the device credit for doing its job. Bandits screamed and fled, abandoning their wounded the instant the monsters appeared. Panic ripped through them. Who wants to be dinner? So running was the only smart move, but they never should have come here. They'd somehow left one behind, and a ravenous beast instantly loomed over his stark silhouette. Kannata and the stranger clung to the hope this horror would end, and she pressed herself against him, clapping her hands over her ears. The shop owner cradled her head, desperate to soothe her as her sobs stabbed at his heart. Silence settled. Kannata raised his head to check the scene, but the girl kept hers down, too frightened to look up. He waited until he knew she was safe, then barked that the bandits and their wolves were gone, and everything was fine now, her eyes still hidden beneath a fringe of thick black lashes. Silence fell and he finally stared, her face a flawless oval, every strand of hair placed like a crown, and that modest, expensive outfit she gripped as if it alone could save her. Kinosai reeled in confusion, realizing how certain moments could ignite some senses into a roar while snuffing others into dead silence. Kannata was so locked on the problem he didn't even notice he'd been holding a sweet girl in his arms the whole time. Panic flooded him. He had no clue how to act so she wouldn't think it strange, and she kept staring at him like she was waiting for something. Had he crossed a line, he'd only risked everything to save her. Those touches didn't come from desire. He kept insisting he wasn't a monster, and the words rang hollow. He had to wrench himself back to his senses. Kannata's breath caught. The girl broke her silence for the first time that night and let out a raw scream that she was terrified, and mercifully no one in the building could react badly to her cry. Her flood of emotion was perfectly justified. The shop owner teetered on the edge of tears as she flung herself against his chest again, crying bitterly while he had no choice but to keep stroking her light hair. The hero remembered like a punch to the gut. He had to restore the store before the monsters returned. After everything, the building was a wreck, the screen and doors riddled with holes and the parquet soaked through. She trembled with pain and fear, and Kannata couldn't just walk away. He leaned in, determined to soothe the sweet stranger first, her tiny frame barely covered by his palms. He hadn't even wrapped her in an embrace when the familiar ping of a system window sliced the air, declaring to the hero that his level had just risen. Irritation flared, so he snapped open his status to check. The hero's eyes snagged on a light switch plate that hadn't been there a moment ago, and the store owner gaped, utterly baffled. Why did she show up only on the 3rd level when she could have been added from the very start? Kannata erupted in fury, and the mysterious stranger recoiled, terrified by the savage ferocity of her once-calm protector. Striding through Salatus, the young woman guided Kannata west, brimming with new spark and no hint of fear, even though the forest teemed with dark, deadly secrets. She clasped the shopkeeper's hand like they'd been inseparable for years, and he squirmed with unbearable awkwardness again. If everything went smoothly, they'd reach the city in a few days. The stranger erupted into a radiant smile, thanked the guy for his deed, and introduced herself as Tina Arnuish. She was only 16. She revealed she was the daughter of Sahara Arnuish, a merchant from the city of Kadna, the very place they were heading through this forest. The boy hung on every word, fascinated, and though she was only 16, his age, she moved with fierce, unmistakable independence. As Tina pressed on, memories slammed into her. The carriage bound for the kingdom of Grandale, laden with cargo, was suddenly set upon by local bandits. The servants who hid our newcomer during the raid died protecting her. Kannata peered around the corner and saw their bodies, and the sight ripped the young lady's composure to shreds, so she couldn't bear to think about it. She begged to bury them, thanked Kannata again, and he shot back that he couldn't leave things like that. His moral upbringing wouldn't let him stand by. Tina hovered on the brink of asking an immodest question and apologized before the words even left her mouth. She was impeccably well-behaved. Respect laced every remark, and she kept slipping a thank you or an I'm sorry to the person she was talking to every now and then. She decided to unmask her savior. Could he secretly be a famous magician? He froze, stunned, utterly ordinary. His threadbare clothes gave him away, and he couldn't imagine anyone mistaking him for a magician. Kannata tossed out his name and dropped that he technically bore the title of shop hero from another world. He was about to admit it wasn't what he'd expected when Tina's eyes bulged and she blurted, "You haven't always lived here." Could he truly be a legendary hero plucked from another world? Her eyes flew wide, and the hero thought her jaw would drop from pure delight. Kannata couldn't even fathom that this was anything special. Tina dove into the story of what she'd heard. In the kingdom of Grandale, everyone knows heroes from other worlds exist. Countless books and legends lay out precisely how they crushed evil and saved the world, and the young lady has devoured those tales. He realized they'd been elevated to the same legendary rank as King Arthur, Perseus, and Japan's Yamato Takeru, and the thought of sharing that roster slammed into him, pride roaring in his chest. If Tina found out Kannata wasn't a hero, but just an outcast, she'd be devastated, and the thought that this was likely tore him up inside. To stop his mind from spiraling, the shop owner spun to the girl and snapped, "Do you know the way out of this forest?" She shot back a single, sure yes. She revealed she'd roamed the trade routes for years. Her hometown was the nearest settlement to here. Then Tina stepped forward and offered to be the hero's guide, eyes drilling into him as she waited for his answer. Kannata never imagined it could happen, but when he asked she beamed with joy, and he realized this cutie would jump into anything to help him. At last he agreed to go with him, but a single nagging doubt burned in his gut. She clung to his hand through walks, meals, even gymnastics. Kannata, unused to such constant closeness, wondered if every girl in this world was that fearless. For him, an eternal loner, it was pure torture. Sometimes embarrassment flushed him, and she'd tilt her worried little face toward him, eyes hunting for signs he was okay, poised to spring into emergency action at the slightest falter. He snapped that he was fine, then his mouth betrayed him with a pet name for her. Sharp reflexes and iron self-control slammed the brakes, and he corrected himself instantly. Kannata tried to steer the conversation, insisting to Tina they had to sprint out of the forest now, before monsters or bandits could pounce on them again. Eyes blazing, the hero demanded the young woman answer this. Are every monster in this world nocturnal? He needed to confirm the hunch he made the night he first clashed with those wolf-like beasts, and he even pointed to them as his example so she'd understand. Tina snapped, yes, but legions of monsters brimming with potent magic still move freely under the sun. Monsters lurk at night, but bandits strike in broad daylight, so the heroes couldn't drop their guard. Kannata agreed with the girls, a cold dread gripping him that the danger hadn't eased a bit, even after everything. The boy jabbed a question at our newcomer. Where are you headed, Kadna? And Kannata demanded, desperate to know if he'd read it right, was he also under Grandale's control? His face clenched, fear coiling in his eyes, and he visibly flinches from anything tied to that kingdom. Tina, seeing him almost for the first time, has no clue about the recent tragedy that shadows him. Malady declared Kadna an independent, fortified city born of bold free traders, still roaring with commerce and famed as one of the continent's busiest trading hubs. Kannata's breath hitched, freedom shimmered there, and a single story was enough to hook his curiosity. She admitted she couldn't call it freedom, yet she couldn't hide her joy. The atmosphere inside was unimaginably beautiful. They realized the trek to Kadna would take 10 days on foot. By day the heroes cut through the forest. By night they crammed into a lone store to hide from prowling bandits and monsters. Tina couldn't get enough of the guy's shop. She devoured the BLT and milk tea, shouting, simply delicious, each time while Kannata warned her to slow down because she could choke. Kannata's voice hitched as he asked the unlady if he'd heard right. Their world had been at war with the Dark Lord's army for over 100 years, and she locked eyes with him and said this year marks exactly 100 years since the first battle. Her words slammed into him, ripping apart his certainty. When he first arrived and heard Queen Crusade, he'd thought the crisis was brand new and they'd have time to train heroes. He'd never been more wrong. He stared at Tina Arnush as her voice tore open the toll of years of war, and whispers warned the Dark Lord's territories kept swallowing whole regions. Desperate to fix the crisis, the kings of every land hurled themselves into the so-called summoning ritual, and astonishingly, in recent years not a single country has managed to pull it off. 12 years gone and Grandale erupted with thrilling news. A hero from another world had been summoned, not one, but 31. Kannata's breath caught as they realized their entire class had been pulled into service to plug the army's desperate shortage. When the battle with the Overlord's army erupted, hope surged through the crowd for the first time, and every single person pinned their faith on the heroes, a handful of high school students who couldn't have imagined they'd be forced into something like this. After listening to the girl, the hero swallowed and forced out, I understand, even as doubt gnawed at him that he might not be able to live up to everyone's expectations. Tina snapped back, calling him Mr. Kannata, and insisting he was strong, handsome, kind, sensible, and utterly wonderful, which stunned the guy again, his cheeks flushing a treacherous pink and his gaze jerking sideways before he could stop it. She grabbed his sleeve and whispered, You saved my life. That truth alone crowned shop owner Akino's Kannata her greatest hero, her voice trembling and grateful tears welling in her eyes. The boy reached to thank her, but doubt tore through him. Did he deserve these honors at all? Memories of his failures crashed through his mind. Could someone like him truly be called a hero? He came from another world, yet they still banished him, branded useless. That insult seared into the core of who he was. He froze, deciding he shouldn't tell her. He couldn't risk the truth now, so he forced out a thank you and painted on a smile to hide the storm. Kannata shelved the conversation for later. The girl, still buzzing with excitement, lunged forward with another question. Tina leaned in, voice a desperate wheedle, begging to know what the hero would do once they reached the city. He shrugged and admitted he had no concrete plans yet, and honestly never had any. Joy exploded across her face as she invited him to stay with her, insisting her father would be ecstatic to accept the man who had saved her daughter's life. Arnawish hungered for his tales, convinced they were endless, and every time he plunged into an adventure her eyes ignited with childlike curiosity. Kannata flinched, admitted he knew almost nothing about this world, then clung to that as the perfect excuse to stay with the locals. He fretted about being a burden on the girl's family, and she grinned, insisting they'd be only too happy to have him. When the hero thanked her, she tossed back that it was a given, waving with a slight smile. Helping others was as natural to her as breathing, and no falsehood touched her voice. Akinos didn't have a second to spare for the future. His store swelled with new goods, which could mean now's the perfect time to start a business. You can't stay holed up in the store, inch out of your comfort zone, face the outside world, and steel yourself for whatever storms it throws your way. A sudden fire surged through him. He was stunned to discover a goal could feel exhilarating. He'd always sneered that dreams belonged to naive fools, but the chase revealed a blunt, prosaic truth. He hurtled toward the city with his new, wildly enthusiastic sweetheart at his side. She cheered him on, backing the idea with bright, unwavering energy, and her spark set his usually guarded heart ablaze. 10 days later, they finally poured into the city of Kadna. Weary but hopeful, the travelers paused to gulp air and survey the streets, and after the long trek a spark ignited, their true adventure was only beginning. She jabbed her hand toward Kannata and proudly declared it her hometown. Look how beautiful it is. And the landscape that spilled into view was impossible to tear your eyes away from. The city stretched vast and towering, and Kannata gaped as ancient stone structures clung to the sheer faces of giant mountain cliffs. He had no idea it could be this beautiful when he arrived. Standing in Otaku, he couldn't miss it. This place could throw full-blown anime festivals. Tina stared, baffled since it flew in the face of what people here liked. Kannata waved frantically, trying to drive the point home. There are so many people. He said that back home anime festivals are relentlessly packed, shoulder to shoulder, just like here. She leaned in, hanging on every word as she pictured a roaring sea of fans united by a fierce love of Japanese culture. Tina gushed that it was absolutely lovely, swore she'd heard wild tales from other heroes about Akihabara and Ikebukuro, and desperately yearned to see them, and the hero's heart clenched at how startlingly different everything here felt. His mind ignited with one burning question. Could he return, snatch this sweet girl away, and build a real, happy life for them far from this world? She deserved better, and he could give it to her. Together they'd blaze through legendary adventures and even topple the Dark Lord. But what then? Could he ever see the transported Tina again in his own world? Can they snatch a true happily ever after? It hit him like a punch. He knew it was probably impossible. His throat tightened and tears threatened to fall, so he blurted, "Happy endings don't happen," and his partner froze, stunned. Tina burst through the door, finally home, joy exploding in her chest. After everything she'd been through, tears sprang to her eyes. As if she'd been reading his mind, she gripped his hand again and declared they were here only because of him, saying she could never thank him enough in her entire life. This service was priceless. She fell to her knees, pleading with the hero to let her repay him another way, and Kannata just stared, baffled by what she meant. She begged him to keep watching over her and swore she'd live for him alone. He stood rooted, breathless. Who in the world could look into those angelic eyes and hear those words without their heart skipping a beat? Kannata tried to insist he'd done nothing special, but the words froze in his throat. Her delicate hands trembled as she clutched the folds of her dress, and he'd never before faced sincerity and devotion like this. He owed Tina his thanks. Scrambling for an excuse, he stammered that without her he'd have been lost in this forest, and only God knew what would have happened to him next. Joy erupted in her, thrilled she could help her savior. She pressed her plea again, shrugging off his nervous laugh and red-faced awkwardness. Suddenly it burned into his eyes. He couldn't unsee it. It was their turn. Helmeted guards peered from beneath their visors, the air going ice, still with tense anticipation as their leaden gazes probed each traveler. Tina exploded with joy and the guy stood frozen, stunned. Is that all? Isn't it way too easy? Kannata jolted. Could Tina's father really wield that much power? If the girl he'd saved was a millionaire's daughter, this screamed romance manga setup, and Tina just smirked, claiming she had a special pass. He scanned the people in line like a detective, each face different, but a single strange bond ran through them. Could they all be citizens of Kadna? He groaned, furious at fate. If he'd been cool, he'd be the classic protagonist with Tina as his heroine, so why was he stuck with this useless power? Tina begged him to stop staring, cheeks flaming with embarrassment. She snarled that the entire crowd had packed in to claim the right to inherit the exact pass she carries. You can't see a thing from here, and they've even carved out a section called Zastanai. Kannata frowned and admitted he didn't quite get it. Tina fired back that they were temporary workers. Many flocked to the city for jobs and then returned to the wall, and most of the people in line came from there. It sat beyond the southern wall, its people stripped of Kadina's citizen rights, and the hero snapped, so it's basically a whole other city. That Kadina felt enormous. Narrow streets, unfamiliar signs, and endless turns set his head spinning. Canada's only worry was that he wouldn't get lost here. Then Tina seized his hand. She led him to her home, longing carved into every movement. she missed her loved ones, and Kannata trailed silently behind, mesmerized as the thought of family reshaped her into someone softer. She flashed a smile and declared she wanted him to meet her father right away. The hero stared at their fingers laced together, probably stunned by how lightning-fast everything was changing. After weaving through cramped, teeming streets arm in arm with his beloved, Kannata reached the designated spot, and a shocked gasp ripped from him. A gargantuan building towered before him. Could this really be her home? Could she really be that noble lady, the one whose hand the hero should never have held? Kannata felt the air crackle, like the title, A Bride from Another World for the hero, had just burst the story into life. Whether he liked it or not, his hunch slammed home. The little girl really was a rich man's daughter, and she couldn't fathom why anyone would call that strange or wrong. He pleaded not to be reprimanded for everything he'd done to the girl. None of it seemed special. Then a man suddenly stepped out toward them. Tina lunged into his arms, burying her face against him, and Adonis, his name, choked out that he'd thought he was going to die when he heard about the attack. Relief exploded in his chest. The girl and her companion were still alive. She blurted an apology for making him worry. The whole mess wasn't her doing, but saying sorry was wired into her. Then Arnosh stepped forward and introduced her savior to the man. He threw himself into a low bow, announced he was the Arnawish family's butler, and thanked him with every fiber of his being for saving Lady Tina. Kannata just said it wasn't worth it. A voice ripped through the quiet, shouting to the girl. It hit Kannata. The girl's words revealed the truth. The towering man was her father, and relief cracked across his features as he stretched a huge hand toward her. Kannata watched, elation surging through him at the story's happy ending. Tina had survived safely and was back in her father's arms, and he swelled with pride knowing he'd made it happen. Without warning, Tina's father struck her. What could have driven him to that? He erupted, accusing her of coming back empty-handed and bleeding the family's coffers dry, spat, useless girl, and vowed she wouldn't be allowed home until she paid back every loss and lost profit. Rage boiled in Kannata. He lunged to confront the injustice, but the butler clamped a hand on his arm and hissed that this was a family matter to be left alone. The hero ignored him. If he couldn't strike that bloated fool he called his father, he'd spit sweet poison at him for hurting a defenseless girl. Let him try to hurt her again. He even called Kannata a ragamuffin. Tina collapsed onto the cold road, numbly pressing her hand to the searing cheek where the blow had landed, her usually clear voice shattering into a pitiful, broken cry as she called Kannata for help, crying bitterly. He ripped into the bloated bastard, snarling that Tina, his daughter, had barely cheated death. How dare he call himself a father? Every word dripped with contempt for him, if you could even call him that. The conflict swelled. The man planted his feet and refused to back down, convinced the young man was brazenly crossing lines. Maybe he'd even forgotten the city's rules, as Tina dropped to her knees, pleading for him to stop. He hurled himself into the jaws of death to shield her. Maybe one day he'll rise to save not just the kingdom of Grandale, but the entire world. She declared Mr. Kannata wasn't just anyone. He was a hero ripped straight from another world. A cocky smirk curled on his lips. What kind of hero was he when, of all those summoned, he alone had been expelled and branded a nonentity? The verdict hit hard, utterly useless, completely worthless. Kannata ground his teeth. He'd wanted the truth to come out another way, face to face, anything but to be humiliated before her family, and now, after everything he'd said, he could only dread how she'd treat him. The father continued, "That's the same scoundrel who left a trail of monstrous crimes. He couldn't know everyone had been fabricated to discredit Kannata. Convinced that even speaking to such a nobody tarnished the Arnawish family's name, he jabbed a finger and sent him packing as Tina watched, sorrow etched across her face. Lay sprang to her feet and bellowed for everyone to hear that Kannata was her hero, and no one dared speak to him like that. Tears shimmered in her eyes as the boy listened, frozen and clueless. Nobody would believe him anyway. He brushed off her words, snatched her hand, and snapped that because she'd come home alive, she had to get back to work. There was no time to stand around and chat, and Tina didn't want that. She sobbed bitterly and cried out to Mr. Kannata for help. He could only stretch out his hand, and her raw, broken plea made his heart ache. The hero stepped into Zastania and froze. He hadn't expected it to be worse than the other districts. The place reeked of a ragged ghetto, more slum than city. The man drops to his knees, voice raw, pleading forgiveness for his brother's harsh words, and Kannata, jaw clenched, aches to be the one saying sorry. He couldn't meddle in Tina's family affairs, and deep down, he was sure their relationship would end sooner or later. Even if he'd snatched her away by force, he'd have unleashed a whole new wave of problems. Fists clenched, he gathers himself, apologizes for his audacity, and asks the man if he may ask a question. The man nods and agrees. Kannata's fired up to open his own business in the city, and is on the hunt for the perfect spot to set up his store. He snarled that without citizenship, you can't trade a single coin inside the walls. He throws him a daring alternative: pull it off in the carry wall. According to Adonis, the area throws its gates wide open. Anyone can live and trade there for free. Newcomers aren't driven off. They're shoved out to the district's outer edge, beyond the wall, where attacks strike hard and they become a living wall of people. Alone in the empty clearing, he stood exposed and defenseless, desperately hoping trouble wouldn't find him. Kannata released a heavy, shuddering breath. His new life in another world kicks off, and he's primed to charge headfirst into every trial. His voice exploded through the room, heads whipped around, eyes wide with shock. Right outside the store, Kannata bellows for a squad to raid a shop from another world jammed with the rarest goods. They burst into the store, mouths agape. None had ever seen anything like it, and he's slammed by a wave of memories of the people of Grandale. He'd stayed away from the locals before, but now his reach has exploded, and with a fierce hunger to run this business, everything's about to turn around fast. A stunning girl strides up to the hero and, eyes wide with wonder, blurts out, "What's a store?" Kannata beams, declaring the shop peddles rare treasures and otherworldly wares, and beckons them not to be shy. The city reels in shock, but residents still swarm the streets and start snatching up whatever's for sale. The first customer snapped up a sandwich. Kannata savored its flavor, and he vowed to craft a knockout impression so people would keep coming back. Suddenly, silence slammed into the space between them, heavy and painfully awkward. Kannata blanked out and left the product shockingly without a price tag. Fear clenched his gut. Back in Grandale, he never had to spend a coin. The crown granted a royal allowance, but he never even went shopping or spent a single penny. Clueless about money's worth, the boy scrambles to recall coin names, even though he can only name 4. A sheepish young man hustles to untangle the mess and put everything back in order. He slams the price, 1 bronze coin, and every visitor freezes, stunned into silence. They stampede to the checkout for bargain goods, and the main character's blood runs cold. As evening fell, the store slammed its doors shut. Kannata staggered through the workday, crushing exhaustion, sapping every move. His day spiraled into pure chaos. Then a kind woman stepped in and calmly unpacked the local exchange rate for him. 1 bronze coin and anything you wanted was yours. If a shop like that stood in his world, Kannata would swarm its doors every morning. He flashes back to crowds grinning as they grabbed everything, and the truth hits him hard: he'd been reckless. He kicks himself. If he'd known, he'd have asked Tina about the local currency. He can't stop thinking about her. Worry claws at his chest as he wonders how she's doing and fears she's disappointed in him. Kannata burns with longing, desperate to see her again. Just a month in, he'd already mastered the local language and tamed the store's brutal grind into routine. He slapped price tags on the goods and slammed down a strict cap: 5 items per person. Built a toilet exclusively for visitors. He locked in strict working hours and carved out 2 30-minute restocking breaks, while the big 24 on the storefront is a brazen lie. He's betting the locals can't read numbers. There's just 1 cash register, and Kannata still clings to it, greedily propping up the whole place while the neighbors finally start pitching in to support it. Already the hero feels himself becoming one with this place. A blaze of certainty hits him. He's convinced he's finally found his purpose in this world, the thing he's hunted for so long. A man pounds on the guy's door, snapping his attention to it. Kannata flung the door open and ushered Zariel inside. He'd come for the goods. The guy thrusts a bag bulging with yesterday's proceeds into his hands, and the man lavishes praise on his razor-sharp trading skills. Zariel smirks and ribs Kannata, claiming he's jealous, while the man who looks suspicious is actually a merchant from the west. About a week ago, just after the store opened, they ran into each other. That day he was about to take a break when a stranger's sudden voice sliced the air and slammed a cold knot of dread into his stomach. Grinning, the merchant stuck his head into the doorway and tossed out a scandalously tempting offer. Fear slammed into Kannata the moment. The man's gaze and stance screamed danger. Rill pressed the store owner on how to exchange his earnings, but the man froze, baffled. He didn't even know what exchange meant. The merchant leaned in and revealed every single one of the man's wares sold for 1 bronze coin, and every day he amassed thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of coins. The merchant insisted the man must be drowning in them, and the hero thought about it. Zariel flashes a crooked grin and dangles a deal: swap your bronze for glittering gold coins, but he'll demand a steep price. He sought a mere 0.5% cut of the total for his service, leaning in and assuring the guy it was an unbeatable deal. Suspicion coiled in the young man as he glared at the merchant, but the blinding mountain of coins in the store forced him to seriously consider the offer. That's the spark that ignited their collaboration. Right at the start of their business relationship, Unease nodded his gut. He still couldn't tell if the man was a good guy or a con, yet he kept cooperating and trading coins with him. The gang snaps into sync and cooperates, while the merchant cracks up, crowning Kannata the deity of this area. Kannata goes betrayed and desperately begs them to drop the nicknames. Kannata's mind claws at the thought, could their world really have only one goddess, Ishia? Zariel confirms the titled deity belongs to her, and that truth reshapes everything. Grandale and every other government are run by women, and every great figure is a woman. Zariel declared those whose deeds mirror saints are revered as the incarnation of the goddess Ishia, and spat a dry Nahak. The guy nodded in agreement, but a strange unease still curled inside him. He still reels, just being alive feels like a miracle, and being a man or a woman doesn't change a thing. The merchant seethed, stunned that Grandale's people would banish a hero with breathtaking powers, and he branded them fools, while Kannata's eyes went wide at how fast rumors raced, and he admitted he'd tried to negotiate with them. The talks collapsed. Tamaki's face crashes back into his mind, and he's left burning to know who she's become now. He leans in, voice raw and honest, asking genuinely how things are now in Grando. The merchant snaps that, apart from word of his exile, every other kingdom rallies behind the heroes. Only Grandale slams its gates and forbids them from leaving the country. Zariel doubted the hero was truly curious about the city's fate, then the hero's eager questions wiped that doubt away. Among the many heroes, a few are rotten to the core, but his friends still stand by him, and he burns with worry, desperate to know how they're holding up now. The merchant winked at Kannata and vowed to dispatch his men to investigate. A hero asks, and I'll move heaven and earth, he grinned. Kannata flushed and thanked him. Eyes clouded in thought, the young man lashes out at Zariel. Why treat me so well when you gain nothing? Zariel's face goes blank. He has no idea what the young man means. In his eyes, Kannata towers as the greatest hero of the last few hundred years, and the guy's jaw drops, stunned into silence. The merchant steels himself and blurts out the truth. Nobody actually wants the heroes to defeat the Dark Lord. Kannata freezes, stunned. His war has been the backbone of a vast economic machine. If the Dark Lord disappears, nations that trade resources for battles and mercenaries will watch livelihoods evaporate, a global crisis will erupt, and millions will be plunged into poverty. The toll would dwarf the number killed by monsters, and the hero couldn't shake the thought that Grandale was snubbing other countries' pleas just to cling to its leadership. Zora roars that the world's food crisis could vanish in a heartbeat, only if that guy is here. He tears resources from the void itself, unleashing an endless tide. That's why the merchant swears Kana is the goddess Istia reborn. In a heartbeat, the hero's face snapped into a new, unreadable expression. He demanded the merchant explain why he swore the man could conjure endless wares. He couldn't believe Zariel knew. He'd only told Tina about the store system. He swears he's at that store nonstop, put his people on round-the-clock surveillance, and never once saw anyone deliver goods. Zariel snaps that the store building itself appeared far too mysteriously. Kannata's gut drops. He knows he screwed up. The merchant grinned and announced he'd realized every good could be produced right inside. The other man's jaw dropped. He'd always thought himself clever, not that clever, and he swallowed his pride, deciding they'd be fools to become enemies. The hero asked Zariel to bury his commercial secret. Zariel agreed and vowed never to dig deeper. He declares the guy a priceless ally, far more vital than any monster slayer, and desperately wants to keep their peaceful bond alive, and Kannata cherishes his partner too. Zero bolted from the store, vowing to hunt down every scrap of news about Grandale today and bring back a full report. The guys call out one last goodbye to each other. Kannata hunched over the computer, fingers a blur as he hammered the keys. Here, a sudden roar rips his focus away. Noise explodes in the street behind the emergency exit. He locks up, tension slicing through him. No one in the neighborhood should know about this door, and his mind floods with every nightmare outcome. Fear claws at him. What if a mercenary sent by Tina's father has come for him? A voice slices through the silence from behind the door. He calls Mr. Kannata and drops the bomb that they're personally connected. The hero freezes, every muscle snapping taut as disbelief slams into him. He flung the door open. Confirmation hit him. He recognized this voice. Tina hurls herself into the boy's arms, beaming with pure joy at finally seeing Mr. Kannata, the person she's been aching to meet. They slam into each other's arms, joy exploding. After missing one another, life surges back into them, full and fierce. There she stands, planted in the passageway on the Canadian side, not budging. Thoughts of her feelings for him clawed at his mind. He remembers Mimi, his cat, who latched onto him and refused to let go, clinging like a tiny lifeline. Heat flooded his face as the hug lingered, and he frantically plotted a way to break free. He shoves Tina away, she snaps free. Kannata's face explodes into a grin when he sees him, and he urgently beckons the girl inside. She beams and hurries through the door. He lunged forward, disbelief roaring in his voice. How did you find me in a city this massive? Adonis told her the guy had slipped outside the walls, and rumors of that booming shop were already everywhere, so she understood instantly. She'd wanted to rush to him sooner, but she was forbidden to leave the house. Kannata's chest tightens, and he snaps that he must apologize. He lied to the girl and never told her he'd been expelled from Grandale. Tina locked eyes with the guy, a knowing spark igniting in her gaze. She cut through the silence. You have absolutely nothing to apologize for, and he froze, dazed and speechless. She reveres Parney as a true hero and can't fathom that Grandale actually banished him. Now the people of Grandale must be drowning in bitter regret. Tina had been staking out the store since noon, and Kannata froze. She hadn't even told him before. She watches breathless as crowds flood his shop and spill back out smiling, and she wonders, isn't that the one thing every true hero truly wants? Kannata snaps, insisting his shop only hawks bargain bin wares. That doesn't make him useful to anyone. Tina explodes, declaring it's a lie. She believes in him with every fiber of her being, and proclaims it's only thanks to him that this is possible. Tina vows his ability eclipses them all, and Kannata's mind snaps to Zariel. He'd made the exact same claim as the girl. She's the merchant's daughter, raised in the clatter of markets. She reads deals like open books and smells profit from a mile away. Heat floods his cheeks and he goes bright red, but a wide, giddy grin refuses to fade. Tina grips his hands for support, eyes shining with fierce admiration, and tells him she thinks he's a truly amazing hero. She grins, reminds him he once saved her life, and crowns him the coolest hero in this world. He goes betrayed, squirming under the tidal wave of praise. She dares to accuse him of seeing himself as worthless because he can't fight monsters. She scoffed, tossing the idea aside as pure nonsense. He can't fight, but an endless, life-saving potential pulses inside him, and Tina urges him to stand tall and be proud of that gift. Kannata's throat tightens with gratitude as he thanks her, and her words pry a heavy stone free from his soul. She swears she'll stand by him, no matter how the cards fall. Out of nowhere, she reaches for his lips and leans in for a kiss. He freezes, stunned, utterly bewildered. He gapes, disbelief boiling in his veins. He can't believe what's happening. Kannata shoves the stunned girl aside as a cold clarity slams into him. He's not ready for this turn in their relationship. Red-faced and mortified, he blurts no, and Tina jumps back, eyes wide with fear. He catapults to his feet in an awkward hop, flapping and fretting that the break must end and they have to open the store now. The customers are already tired of waiting. Tina shot back that it sounded a bit fake. Kannata sputtered awkward, confused excuses, and then about 2 months slipped by since Tina returned. Kannata's shop is booming, customers swarm in nonstop, and Tina chips in to lend the guy a hand behind the counter. She calls out that the customer tide has died down and he can rest. He flashes a grateful grin and thanks her as he hauls the boxes away. He steals a quick rest, warning Tina to call the instant trouble stirs. She just smiles and tells him to leave everything to her. Evening swallows the street and the shop's shutters snap shut. Tina whirls to Mr. Kannata. She steps forward and asks to help the guy in the store. He goes rigid, every muscle coiling with sudden tension. She already told her father she's starting an apprenticeship, so she could be staying here for ages, and the revelation that Tina might move in with him hits the guy like a lightning strike. Relief surges through her. Now they can live together, and he finally grasps what has befallen him. Tina pledges she'll give it her all and begs him to lean on her, and Kannata, transfixed by that smile, feels it hit him. She's the one he wants to protect. He's forced to admit the girl is even better than he thought, and he wonders whether merchants like Kadna and Zariel are all this kind, while Tina watches him, interest burning in her eyes. He pulls her in as his assistant. She knows her stuff and, most importantly, has earned his trust, easing his tension, so he tells her to count on him too. Tina thanks the guy, boasting she knows everything about him so he can relax, but Kannata bursts out to correct her. He meant himself, not the store. He cuts in and demands again what she meant by, I know everything, and Tina says he sometimes calls her Tenochka. That tiny pet name turns even his talk about the mole on her back and other little things into something unbearably cute. Shock shatters him. He crashes to his knees and begs for forgiveness, while she, bewildered, tells him not to apologize. The store still pulls massive crowds. People swarm its doors. Tina kept everything running like clockwork. Kannata tore into his meal and sank into a blissful, peaceful rest. Loneliness evaporated. His world exploded with color and meaning, and he moved through each day calm and overflowing with joy. Evening settled, he told Tina, "It's late, time for you to rest." She refuses to rest, planted at the computer. She urges him to take a break while her fingers blur, punching today's earnings into the computer. He forces an awkward grin. Almost nothing surprises him anymore, but Tina's competence still stops him cold. He's sure that if she had the internet, she'd instantly crack how to use websites and ads to catapult their store into the spotlight. Minutes later, she wraps up her work, locks eyes with him, snaps off the light, and glides toward his bed. She drops onto his bed, eyes locked on the sleeping guy. He snaps awake, fear lancing through him, and shoves the girl off the bed. Tina snaps her tongue and hisses under her breath that today is another failure, while Kannata watches her every twitch. Tina slips under the covers and murmurs goodnight, while he buries his face in his hands, tormented by the thought that one step past the line means no return, and the temptation is shredding his resolve. He sends a good night back, and she sinks into sleep with fire in her chest, swearing she won't quit and will try again tomorrow. Their days slid into a relentless rhythm. By day he ran the shop, by night he waged war with Tina. A sharp chime tore the silence. He froze as his level shot up, shock flooding him because he had no clue what he'd just done. Then a cold jolt hit Kannata as he realized he alone could hear the level climbing, so he sprinted off, yelling to Tina he'd be in his office for a while. Bafflement slammed into the hero. He hadn't fought or defended himself, yet he ripped open his status screen, hunting for a system error. He skyrocketed his level, not by fighting anyone, but by running the shop, and it was way cooler. Fresh stock, a defense system with a recon drone, and a load of other upgrades. New icons explode onto his desktop, and Kannata studies them hard. Maybe the store slipped in gadgets made for this world. Their purpose is cryptic at first glance, so he won't trigger them without knowing what they'll do. He stumbles on a reconnaissance drone, and his gut screams. There's no way he's trusting that thing. Hoping it won't cause any harm, he steels himself and makes a desperate attempt to launch it. Kannata stares at the camera feed as a drone rips into the sky, appearing to launch straight from the store's roof. The drone rocketed into the sky, leaving the guy gaping at how high it could climb. He beams like a kid with a new toy, stunned as the drone locks onto someone snoozing on his store's roof. He freezes, heart slamming, when he spots a stranger sprawled across the roof and shock rips through him. He slammed the zoom on the photo, heart pounding, bewildered as he tried to make sense of the motionless body lying in the frame. He bolts across the yard, scales the roof, and glares down, determined to uncover why the one who should be in Grandale is here. Kannata vaults onto the roof, fury erupting as he roars at the girl, who shudders in confusion from the sharp screen. Recognition slams into him. It's Tamaki, and she greets him with a radiant smile. The clumsy girl, trying to say something, falters, loses her balance, and hurtles headfirst onto the hard floor, her face smashing into it. Tamaki erupted at the guy, voice razor-sharp, as she warned that if a single bruise marred her delicate skin, he'd be the one to blame. Kannata spun to the girl and demanded, "Why are you here?" She barreled toward him, lungs burning, shouting, "I came for you." Kannata reels as her words slam into him, scrambling his thoughts. Zariel lunged at another merchant with a sharp question, "Is this true?" And the man met his glare and nodded. The report was accurate. A nervous man lifts his face to the night sky, breath hitching as dread and wonder wage war beneath his ribs. A bone-splitting roar ripped out of the mountains. A colossal beast erupts from there, unleashing a bone-chilling hiss. Kannata demanded how she'd gotten here, and Tamaki snapped that the hero training program had spiked her level and unlocked a search and track power, so she tore out of the city and sprinted straight here. His jaw dropped. She'd somehow carved a path through this treacherous forest where monsters lurked behind every tree. Tamaki melted into the shadows, unleashing her assassin ability, stealth, silent and lethal. Her ability scrubs her presence clean. She ghosted past monsters tearing at empty air and slipped away, and the guys left staring, thinking. She erupted into hysterics, expecting his wide-eyed admiration. He just stood there, envy stabbing him over her two bizarre powers, while his only skill was inventing new kinds of onigiri. Kannata shrugs it off. It's not important. His attention snaps to something completely different. Tamaki's face reddens as she sheepishly blurts that she bolted from the training program. She snaps that the program's getting impossibly tougher, and she's completely fallen behind. He reels, eyes wide, and blurts, "Are you sure that's enough to take down the Dark Lord of Demons?" She smirked, utterly unfazed, almost certain the elite squad was already sealed with Kuramachi inside and Kun at its head, so they'd steamroll to victory without her. Kannata leans in and fires the question, "How are the others? Is she okay?" And she gives a shaky, hesitant yes. She says everyone on the third team was worried sick about the guy. The nearby store kept many of them alive, and now that he's vanished some have shut themselves away. Everyone swallowed Kuramachi's story like gospel, sure the boy had been expelled for his own mistakes. He snapped that the first team guys never accepted him, while Kannata's best friend watched, worry clawing at his chest. She shot the question at him, do you remember a Sajiri, Riku, and he could only pull up a few foggy, half-formed memories of her. Tamaki drops the bomb. She vanished right around the time that guys slipped out of town. Looks like Minazuki-san stumbled into her at the gate. She snapped now that Akino's Kun, the person I'd been watching, has finally been expelled, and she decided she had nothing left to do in this city. She vowed to travel freely from that moment, entrusted her care to Nazuki-kun, and wished him well with all her heart. His jaw dropped when he realized she'd been watching him the whole time. He demanded why, but Tamaki admitted she didn't know, and when she asked if she might have been chasing him, he snapped that he never saw her. The guy blurts out whether it's okay for a Sejiri from the 13 to win alone, and Tamaki snaps that Riki-chan wields the poem ability. She still can't fathom what her ability even is. Kannata's pulse spikes. Could that girl use her search and track ability to hunt her down? She flings her hands up. The prophet she's been hunting is gone. Everything falls apart, and in a bitter sweep she drags everything away with her. He reaches out to a respected merchant, betting the trader might hold a lead on a Sajiri. The girl turns to Kannata with a grateful smile and thanks him. Relief crashed over her. He was so worried about Rika-chan, and she thanked him again, voice shaking with gratitude. To him it wasn't some grand spectacle. It was plain as day. He sincerely hopes every classmate survives and that they all get back to their home world together. Joy explodes across her face as she tosses him a knowing smile. She vows they'll all come back alive and unscathed. He snaps that her search and track skill can't lock on without a goal and offers to give her one to chase. She launched into frantic hand-waving and a mortified shriek, leaving him frozen and utterly baffled. Tamaki's bag was already hiding his little kitten keychain, and she nearly explodes with relief that he never noticed. She fidgets with her keychain, but Kannata's gaze is glued somewhere else. Tina bursts into the room, deadpan and world-weary, announcing to the hero that they're running out of sandwiches. Her gaze snaps to Tamaki, and she stammers a lost, apologetic, sorry for interrupting. Tamaki can only let out a single, high, shocked scream. She snaps, who's the cute girl next to me? And the slightly lost guy's eyes go wide as he suddenly remembers this is their first meeting. Kannata jabbed a finger at the girl and declared she was his hired employee. By day they hustle together in the shop, by night they share a house and watch over each other, and the girl steps forward, introduces herself as Tina, and admits she's a little clumsy. Tamaki erupts into a scream of pure delight. It hit her like a punch. Tina was just an employee, and she never imagined the guy was drowning in a labor shortage. She screams again, blurting an offer to hire her too, and Tina cuts into the conversation to apologize for bringing it up. Ever since she started working here, the shortage of hands melted away, and she now swears 2 people are all you need. She pivots to Kannata, hungry for his approval. He's taken aback, then admits that thanks to Tina everything has suddenly become so much easier. Labor is still painfully scarce. When those words land, Tina reels in dismay while Tamaki bursts into giddy joy. Tina buries her face in her palms, crushed by disappointment, and a guy leans in to calm her, insisting Tamaki can be loud and selfish and even sloppy like an old man, but she's not that bad. A bolt of memory hits him, and he blurts to Tamaki that his store's level has skyrocketed. They pull her into the store, and she stares, jaw dropping at the dizzying variety packed onto every shelf. Tamaki's face lights up at the endless spread of sandwiches, rice balls, and drinks. Piles of sweets, pudding, and melon bread gleam temptingly, and Kannata beams with pride, reminding his friend he once survived on only 3 items. She proclaims she wants to make this place her home for the rest of her life. She flings herself into his open, friendly arms, squeezes tight, and yells, "You're the best." She darts through the aisles, eyes wide at every product, already hunting the perfect Coke to wash down her fries while Kannata watches with a smug grin. Beaming, eager to try everything, she scoops up a pile of food and rockets into the air. Tina clamps a hand over her mouth and erupts into laughter, telling the guy Tamaki-san is hilarious, and Kannata eagerly agrees. Quirks and all, she watches over their classmates, him included, and the guy desperately wants her to get along with her too. Tina flashes a grin and rushes an apology to Kannata for snapping at his best friend, declaring she's honored to get the chance to meet heroes from another world. Tamaki chews, swallows, and vows she'll throw herself into work from tomorrow so they can rely on her. Dawn cracked open the next day. Tamaki howled, collapsing into a ragged plea for a break, and Kannata gaped, stunned at how fast the girl had burned out. No visitors arrive, they snap into agreement and call a break. He realized the place felt wrong, far fewer customers than usual. Tina reached to shut the door, then froze when a customer stood waiting outside. Kannata's jaw dropped. Soshi Melty, the district head, stood waiting right outside the door. They dub her the district chief, but beyond the neighborhood there are no clear administrative lines. As an elder who marshals the residents' meetings, she beams that she absolutely loves these French fries. Gentle, warm Soshi is adored by every local. Beyond the wall they hail her as the district's head and beloved mother. She thanks the heroes for their hospitality, and Kannata bows, grateful she took him in as a newcomer. She swears Kannata has become the area's backbone. Everyone owes him their gratitude. She stepped forward, eyes blazing, and asked the guy to introduce her to his employees. Tamaki thrust his hand forward and boomed that he was a hero from another world, just like Kannata, then flashed a wide grin and said he was glad to meet her. She beams, declaring they're honored to host two heroes in the outer wall area. Tina rushes to the woman and pours out a breathless thank you for taking care of them. Kannata can't tell if Tina bristles at being from the city center, so she blurts, "You look like an angel." For ages people had raved that a kind young woman worked here, and when she finally saw the girl everyone praised, joy exploded inside her. Tears of joy flood her cheeks as she throws her arms around Soshi and thanks her, thrilled that Soshi feels the same about meeting her. Kannata explodes with joy that Sochi and Tina have become friends. He thanks the district head for visiting today, but suspicion sparks. Did she come on some business or not? She clutched her hand to her heart, breathless, and told him she'd actually come here to tell him something important. She chokes out, voice breaking, "I'm so sorry, but..." She barked at him to get out, leave this place, this store, right now. Zariel materializes from nowhere and wholeheartedly backs the woman's words. Everyone else reels at the merchant's sudden arrival, and Kannata snaps, when did he even get here? He says they were swallowed by their conversation and never even glanced his way, so he strode through the door. He showers Tina and the leader with praise, then spots Tamaki and realizes that, in a heartbeat, the number of beautiful, charming flowers had burst into bloom. She spins to Zariel, breathless. "You showed up just in time. I was talking with a Kinasan," and the merchant hurries an apology, urging her to continue. To quash any misunderstanding, she snaps that this is essential, first and foremost, to shield Akina-san and the store. He locks eyes with her, confusion blazing across his face, and repeats her words as if they've knocked the wind out of him. She warns an ancient earth dragon has ruled these lands since time immemorial, here long before the current demon lord birthed his monsters. It nests in the mountain crags and sleeps, yet every 4 years it rouses and descends to hunt. Terrified, Kannata screamed and scrambled to understand why he'd only been told this a couple of months after arriving in the outer environment area, while Zariel sheepishly scratched his head, guilty, because he'd assumed Kannata already knew. He reveals the city's towering wall is a bulwark against a ferocious earth dragon, and the boy snaps to the truth. The rule forcing newcomers to live outside was a desperate precaution to keep them from the beast. Kannata's heart slams. If the earth dragon KDS attacks, what will the people behind the wall do? His own safety won't be enough. Cyril warns most people were evacuated for now, but a handful, crushed by money troubles and sickness, couldn't flee and were left behind to become victims. Kannata clenches his fists, furious and baffled that the people in the city are powerless to help them. There are knights behind those walls and plenty of guards. If they knew the exact moment he'd strike, couldn't they herd everyone inside and bolt the gates until it was over? Tina drops it bluntly, unfortunately. The city gates will slam shut, and everyone will scramble to shore up defenses, leaving no time to rescue the outer zone residents. Kannata stands frozen, heart racing, wondering what this means. Tina's voice trembles as she reports rumors that after the last Kadis swept through, the outer district lay half in ruins and the residents were spared, though she can't recall the details. She chokes out, "I'm so sorry," and Kannata slips his palm over her hands, answering with steady, silent support. Tina and Kannata lock eyes. A single look snaps the conversation back to its starting point. She nods, voice raw, and announces scouts have reported Kadis has awakened and is already bearing down on them, while Zariel and their subordinates slam into action, evacuating residents beyond the outer wall. Kannata's breath caught as the truth hit him. Now he knew why almost no one was here today. The chief warns Kadis could storm the area tonight and apologizes for dropping this on everyone at the last second. People here have always lived in grinding poverty, scraping to make ends meet, but when the hero opened his nearby store, their standard of living shot up, and smiles spread across every face as a woman rushes forward to thank him for the shop within walking distance. Zariel bellows that everyone prays for the hero's safety. The merchant snapped his thought shut with a command, have them return here once Caddy leaves. Tamaki whips around to face Kannata. He pleads with her to drop that expression, he'd love to promise it, but the opponent looming before them is the game's main monster. Visions of the city's people slam into him, and the hero steels himself, then snaps into a single, fateful decision. Tina clasps Kannata's hand, steady and fierce, anchoring him. He whips his head toward Tina, who's sitting right beside him. Their eyes lock for a heartbeat, and Kannata snaps a sharp, decisive nod, no words needed. He bursts in grinning, proclaims to everyone he's decided everything, and Zariel beams at the news. Zariel snaps he'll order his subordinates this instant to sweep them into safety, because if they go. Kannata cuts him off, chest thrust out, roaring that he's the convenience store's hero and will slay this earth dragon. His words slammed into the room like a thunderclap, freezing every face with horror. Everyone recoiled, only Tina stood unfazed. Tamaki parrots the boys' triumphant vow to be heroes and topple Kadis. They roar at the hero, snarling that his words don't even graze them. Kannata's fingers dug into the chair's back, pulse racing. He hadn't expected anyone to protest his words like this. He shoves past the protests and hounds the merchant for every detail of Kadis, size, scales, stance. As the merchant buries his face in his hands, stunned anyone would brag about slaying a dragon while knowing nothing about it. He still insists it's a hulking, muscle-bound dragon, and they named it Kadis as a warning. It shrugs off spells and sword strikes, its shell and thick, armor-like scales baffling even the military. His blood runs cold, this dragon's immune to everything, and his mind races for a way to beat it. Tamaki's panic explodes, they're supposed to be heroes, yet doubt claws at her. What if they can't do a damn thing? Tina spins to the guy and snaps, do you have a plan? He's hatched a plan but hasn't tested it yet, so he doesn't know if it'll work. Kannata's burning to thank the people of the outer wall area for giving him a place he finally feels at home, but he can't pull it off without you. Fully aware of the danger, he locks eyes with everyone and summons every hand in the room to help him. Tina instantly throws her support behind him, vowing she'll always champion the interests of those she protects. She believes in him. She volunteers to help Kannata with a radiant grin, and they both trade painfully awkward glances. Tamaki lets out a razor-sharp scream and lunges forward to help him, swearing she'll protect him because she believes in him. She snaps that she's been Kannata's friend for years, so she has no other choice. She cries out for help with no special powers like theirs. She dives headfirst into tending the wounded. Kannata erupts with genuine joy and shouts a heartfelt thank you to everyone. Tension strangled Zariel. He froze, completely blank on what to do next. Dread claws at him, this could all blow up because of them. Kannata scoffs and says if the merchant helps them, the guy will help him too. Zariel snarls and keeps pressing the guy, demanding he share the secret plan to destroy Kadis. Night slammed down, every preparation for the meeting with the dragon was finished. Now only the lanterns had to be lit, one by one. He bellows a thank you and calls for anyone finished with their work to evacuate. The people below accept the order. The hero drops his gaze as his mind races. Tamaki got drone duty, now she's locked on, breath held, waiting for the store's signal to grab the controls. Allies rallied to their side, every piece snapped into place, and they've got everything locked and ready. Everything hinges on one thing, can the hero slay the dragon? He's held on so far, but this time he must face a colossal dragon. Up close, panic claws at him. If he can't bring it down, he'll doom everyone. Tina inches forward, locks eyes with the tense guy, and asks if he's okay. Kannata blurts to the girl, voice cracking, I'm terrified right now. Tina plants her faith in him, declaring that with her at his side he'll inevitably triumph. Kannata, glowing from that fierce confidence, longs to feel it too. Tina leans in and whispers the magic words to Kannata. He freezes, eyes snapping wide in stunned surprise. She tells him that even if he blunders, and the entire world hates and rejects the hero, she'll always be there to catch him, so he can charge forward without fearing failure. She couldn't care less whether he's kind, brave, or a trembling coward. She'll embrace Kannata and defend him at any cost, and he stares at Tina, stunned. She flashes a shy smile and murmurs, did my words bring you any relief? Her words slammed into him, shredding his doubt and igniting a fierce, steady confidence. He looks at her and declares, that was real magic. Tina beams at the guy, joy radiating across her face. A distant, bone-rattling roar explodes through the air, and blood-curdling screams from the crowd slam into them, ripping the moment apart. Kadis crested the final ridge and planted himself high in the mountain crags. The heroes gaped, jaws dropping, as a colossal earth dragon towered before them. Kannata roared at Tamaki to seize the drone and pilot the dragon now. She springs into action, fingers a blur as she hammers rapid clicks on the computer. The drone hurtles toward the dragon. Kannata's tension tightens. Kadis is a hulking giant, way bigger than he'd ever imagined. Tamaki bursts from the hatch, grinning, shouts that the dragon chased the drone and angles for the praise she's sure is coming. She throws down the gauntlet, vowing they'll face the colossal dragon even though her knees are trembling, and Tina reaches out to calm her, promising everything will be fine. He stammered a shaky reply, likely making Tamaki flinch. Kannata's heart hammered as he gripped the magazine, certain it wasn't much smaller than the giant monster, and dared to believe it could survive the collision. The dragon hurtles toward the store, the heroes cling to the rope, and Kannata snaps, brace for impact. Kadis slams into the building, the impact rocking the entire structure. A dull thud reverberates as the guys clamp onto the magazine, white-knuckled and gripping it like their lives depend on it. Kannata rockets to his feet and checks everyone they're alive. They survived this stage, but the fight's far from over, so they snatch up fire extinguishers and push onward. Determination roars through the three heroes. They sprint at the dragon, fire extinguishers clenched like weapons. He barked the order, aim straight. The dragon's eyes snap to the heroes. Terror floods their bones. The dragon snaps its eyelids shut like a fortress gate, armor hard outside, soft and vulnerable inside. The boy pins his gaze on Kadiz's eyes and mouth, taunting you with a dare to do it, while the girl trembles, longing to run back to her parents but still charges into battle. The guy planted the store like bait to distract Kadis, turning the building into a safety net to swallow the onslaught and spare the city from damage, so they could force Kadis to retreat and strike again. Kannata hurls extinguisher after extinguisher at the dragon, relentless blows smashing into its hide until the beast finally falters. He hurls a fire extinguisher into his mouth, and Tamaki reels back, panic ripping through them with eyes wide. Even then, the dragon holds its ground, and dread claws at the guy's throat. He ached to wrench the monster off the storefront for even a single second, then spun to the girl for a working fire extinguisher. Her spot was empty. He frantically scans for the girl, confusion clawing at him. There's no sign of her, only Tina standing nearby. He snaps at the girl, demanding where Tamaki is, and his eyes lock onto the building's shattered side. Terror slammed into Kannata the instant he pictured the girl tumbling. The dragon's roar split the sky as it spewed a hail of fire extinguishers straight at the hero. Fear rips through him as he screams, raw and desperate, clawing out Tamaki's name. A creature explodes out of the shadows and lunges, freezing the dark-haired guy in stunned disbelief. A spear rockets into the creature's skull, impaling it. The main character gapes, clueless whose weapon it is. A mocking voice hisses behind him, "I did it." He whips around, recognizes Tamaki, then she's gone and he can't find her. She smirks, saying she crept in like an assassin, and gouged the earth dragon's eyes out with her spear. The boy realizes her power hides her from his sight and swallows the confession that she'd made him worry. The girl behind him breathes a relieved sigh. Tamaki's safe. Tamaki of the Void smirked and boasted she was one of the heroes. It was a piece of cake. The protagonist lauded her. Then the girl behind him stepped forward and declared she was actually here. 2 cylinders inside the dragon's jaws splinter under his crushing bite, and a savage growl tears from his throat. He spots the dragon zeroing in on the store and grins because that's perfect. Before it can smash down again, both girls have to get out and sprint for the city. She nods, grabs the rope, and slides down to retreat. Tamaki whirls to face him and declares she'll be counting on him from now on. The other girl urges him to be careful, and he flashes a confident grin. "Leave it to me." The protagonist dove down and planted himself right before the dragon, daring him. The dragon thundered and spewed a choking plume of smoke from his mouth. He locked eyes with his enemy, mind blazing with a plan to bait him into one last, decisive trap. The dragon barrels toward the building, and the main character beckons it closer. As the beast rips a chunk from the store, he seizes the moment and orders the store to vanish. The tower the dragon was battering blinked out of existence, and the beast staggered back, jaw slack with stunned disbelief. The main character whoops with relief as the dragon plummets into the hole left by the store, knowing everything turned out great. He realizes their traps still pinned Kadis, remembers being told every preparation was complete, and watches the dragon slump powerless at the bottom of the pit. He marvels that the instant a thought sparks, a shop materializes at his side. Each time it trembles and kicks up a cloud of dust because a yawning gap sits between the shop and the ground where you could fall. He imagines pulling it off midair. He'd long since given up on getting the altitude that move demands, but now the conditions are perfect. The rope snaps taut and he knows it's the signal. At his signal, he barks for everyone to yank the rope in unison, and they hoist the main character upward in a rickety makeshift elevator. He catapults off the elevator straight at the dragon, roaring, "Try to swallow this," while the man glares at his enemy with blazing fury. The protagonist screams "Store," and a building materializes above the dragon, plummeting down onto him while the dragon just watches it fall. The next instant, the store plummets and slams down onto the dragon on the ground, while the main character still hurtles through the air. The dragon's roar shatters the air as it hacks up a spray of blood from its maw, and the main character slams into the ground. The crowd gapes, murmuring that neither blade nor witchcraft could touch him before, yet this finally did. His destructive power is cataclysmic. The man intones, voice thick with awe, "This dragon is ancient, and his name couldn't be more fitting." His face set like flint, he realizes this dragon, even after such an attack, is still forcing itself up. It heaves its forequarters and growls as the guy lies in front of it. He rockets to his feet and bolts for the elevator as realization crashes in. It's an ancient dragon, not something you kill with one blow. Then a brutal force lifts the guy off the ground. He locks his face into a serious mask and pivots into a bold new move. A man barks for everyone to clear out with a rope clenched in his hand, and the main character hangs suspended in midair, shouting the store to vanish. He catapults off the edge, summons the store to materialize again, and again, he rediscovers exactly what he needs to finally slay the dragon. With lethal resolve, the protagonist charges in to kill the dragon completely, then exploits the store's infinite apparitions to strike the beast again. The dragon roars, then collapses face first into the earth. He slams back down, gasping for air, just inches from his fallen enemy. He's caught wondering if he actually beat him when the dragon's clawed paw explodes into view, nearly scraping him. He snaps back and stares down at the barely alive dragon. He knows the slightest slip in his guard will unleash Kadis and throw them all into dire peril. The dragon flexes a massive paw. Gasping and pinned to the spot, a cold realization slams into him as his vision blurs. Did he just burn through his magic, and does the store even require mana to use? He spits a curse, a cold realization slams into him. Maybe it's just from being so inactive, and the guy looks wrecked. All the people above fix their gaze on the main character in surprise. Then in an instant, he stumbles and plummets. He collapses, snaps his head toward the guys as both girls scream Kannata. With breathless excitement, he silently apologizes in his mind, then everything goes black. The main character watches memories of everything around him ripped to ruins. A little boy huddled beside his mother's unresponsive form, sobbing and begging her to wake as she gives him no answer. Worry twisted his features, then someone suddenly addressed him. The words hit him like a bolt and left him frozen in shock. Kannata spots two girls standing before him, panic plastered on their faces about the guy. They turn out to be Tamaki and Tina, and he recognizes them in a heartbeat. Sheena snaps at the guy, "What happened to Kadis?" Kannata jerks upright but crumples back, he can't get up. Tamaki cuts in, "Calm down and don't bolt upright like that, you need to rest." Tina slams her palm onto his shoulder, yanking his gaze to her as she gasps that he did it. He turns to the dragon sprawled, defeated in the pit, and the tearful girl whispers that it's truly amazing. The crowd on the outer wall erupts with joyful shouts that George has slain the dragon of Kadis, arms shooting skyward, and the two girls fling themselves at him, hugging him fiercely as relief and laughter spill out. They did it, and everything fell into place. The sun blazed overhead, and on that day the outer wall's long streak of misfortune finally snapped, sending the people atop it into roaring, triumphant cheers. He snaps his head up, a triumphant grin splitting his face as he realizes Kadis, the ancient earth dragon, has been felled. A few days after the main hero toppled Kadis, Kadna roared with victory, streets thrummed with celebration, and colorful flags hung end to end along every avenue. Every resident flooded into the celebration, everyone, inside the walls and out, pouring from their homes with cups raised to drink and congratulate one another. Exhaustion pinned him to his bed. He slept inside his 24-hour store for days as shirts got added on level 4. He remembered another disappointment. Tears sprang to his eyes when he saw his level hadn't risen. Even after his victory over Kadis, it stubbornly stayed at 24. He blurts, "Was it because I killed him with a convenience store?" He's turned that idea over a few times, but his level still shot up while he was just running a shop. The main character unveils his shop, a living arsenal bristling with arms, wings, legs, and weapons, and he aches for the next chance to fight back. She beams, shoving the city's bounty in front of the main character. "Look how much they gave us. We can arrange the whole world now." Then the second girl presses food into the guy's hands and pleads, "Eat more, get better." He fixates on the title in the saddest column, thinking how cool it'd be. when out of nowhere a girl slaps a slice of bread into his face and orders him to eat, while a second girl frantically begs him not to. A few days later, the main character finally returned to duty. A smiling man gripped the guy's shoulder and proclaimed he'd earned a lot of money because of him, then offered a sincere, heartfelt thank you. The man declares the store is still thriving, vows to help the guy, and snatches the box from his hands. The crowd erupts, shouting, "Hero!" Everyone rushes to greet him and shouts he's finally back, and the guy thanks the man. Seeing everyone buzzing with cheer, gratitude wells up in him and he wants to thank them somehow. The man stares, stunned, and asks the guy, "Are you serious about this?" The man roared for him to hand over all of Kadis. Reeling, the protagonist choked out, "Take it, Kadis is yours if you want it." He grins, names the guy the best, and slams him into a triumphant hug, then barks for the others to get to work. They'll hawk every item those corrupt nobles amassed at sky-high prices, and the main character sees the ruthless business genius behind it. He earned them a jaw-dropping feast from the chief, and the main character still remembers every mouth-watering bite, thrilled that he loved every single one back then. Someone yells his name and he spins, bracing for whatever this time brings. A rotund man storms up and proclaims him the hero of the 24-hour mausoleum. It's a great honor for him to meet him. A bespectacled man stands behind, and the girl freezes, stunned that this is her father and that he's Adonis. The man prays his ungrateful daughter won't meddle with his trade. The main character, stunned, blurts that Tina always helps him, and the man snaps, "Is that true?" He bellows that she's lucky to have him. The protagonist reels, stunned he's truly her father. The man spits, "Is that the thanks you give me? What kind of reaction is that?" A man glares at the guy and demands, "How do you feel about becoming my daughter's husband?" The girl and our hero reel in surprise, and a voice from behind yells, "He definitely doesn't." She whirls at her father, snapping, "What are you saying? You're chasing customers away, you'll ruin the business." The girl behind leans in and asks the protagonist, "Are you Tina's father?" He meets her stare and answers, "Yes." After some time, guilt carved across her face, she forces out an apology for the trouble her father caused, and he just smiles, waving it off. He's only a little surprised. The girl fires a question at Tina, "Haven't you been home in ages? Your father must be worried," while the main character watches, convinced Tamaki still doesn't know what he really is. He doubts he cares about his daughter even a little. His last visit laid bare a ruthless drive to seize the store, and Tina snaps that it's unlikely to be about her. She drops a bomb, 46 kids in her family, and she's the 23rd. The protagonist and Tamaki spit out their drinks, and Tamaki screams that that's more than their whole class, so they're nobles. The man vows they'll tear into whatever the protagonist asks about what happened, any way they can. He leans close and warns Kannata that word of the convenience store hero beating Kadis may already have swept through Kadina's cities and neighboring countries, if Grandale hears it. He knows they'll make a move. The protagonist, jaw-clenched, snaps that they're more than capable of pulling it off. The kingdom of Grandale only just began unveiling its heroes the other day. A squad of 4, chosen by the hero and led by an immortal, stormed the eastern cave teeming with goblins and seized it. Kannata's breath catches. Has the first mock battle finally ended? The man barrels on. A lone swordmaster stormed the lizard swamp in the southeast and wiped them all out, and the protagonist and Tina stare, stunned that he did it alone. He warns the lizards are far stronger and a far deadlier threat, and rumors roar that the hero swordsman is the one most likely to take down the Dark Lord. Tamaki flashes a smile and asks, "You mean the swordsman hero Shiori?" Hope explodes in the protagonist. He recognizes that name. She's the gaming club's FPS ace. He sized her up as a lone wolf who shuns team play, and that same solitude follows her into the real world. The man demands to know, when the kingdom's valiant heroes triumphs will thunder across foreign shores. If word gets out that he brought down the legendary dragon nobody else would dare touch, every eye will snap to him. He can't afford that. For Grandale, that's a serious problem, and Kannata leans in and asks, "What's so funny about that?" Well, he falls silent for a beat, then fixes Errol with a steady gaze and drops a single request. Errol nods and vows to do whatever he asks. Night cloaks the cliff as a band of knights stares into the dark, and a drone hovers above. Through its feed on his computer, the main character watches and realizes they've arrived far earlier than expected. Guilt twisting in his gut, he remembers how he used the intel, and with Zero at his side, tipped Grandale to the hero's location at the store. Now he's on the city's outskirts and someone snaps, "You leaving?" Tamaki bursts out, "Why?" And the man admits he loves it here and never wants to leave, but someone's hunting him, and if Grandale's pursuers catch him, they'll raise the whole city. He refused to drag the residents into trouble. With Kadis' threat finally gone, the whole crowd hung on his every word. Tamaki's voice trembles as she admits it's a pity. He'd become so friendly with everyone. The guy nods beside her, his own sorrow loud and clear. Now that the city gates have been flung wide, food will surge into the outer wall, and the yawning gap between rich and poor will at last begin to narrow. He contemplates handing the store's goods out to everyone, items that will be useful for the first time, and Tina beams, certain the inhabitants of the outer wall will feel a rush of relief. The protagonist declares Grandale won't need the city when he leaves here, warns that if someone takes the city's residents hostage, this could explode into a serious problem, but the man tells the guy not to worry. He vows they'll keep civilians out of the fight if that's what he wants. The cash he handed over will hire mercenaries from the inner walls to lock down the city, and the man bows his head in thanks. Riders galloped past as the girls kept glancing back, and Kannata thought, if he can stall the pursuers long enough to buy Tina and Tamaki time to reach the hill, their numbers won't matter, only he can pull this off. He steers his drone over the storefront, scans the crowd, and his blood runs cold. Mrs. Crusades and the heroes aren't there. There's no negotiating, they came to deal with him. He whirls as robed figures carve glowing magic circles and unleash searing attacks. His jaw drops. It's real magic. Expecting ruin, they watched the magic projectiles slam into the store's barrier and bounce off without leaving a scratch. The knights stagger back in shock, and our protagonist snaps into motion. He has to hurry, because the fire shutter is clamped shut by a pulsing magical barrier that won't budge, leaving the knights baffled, having only heard about the store before it was even built. A knight levels his sword and bellows for everyone to stop panicking and keep moving. We must haul him out of this strange building. He bellows attack, and a wall of armored knights surges straight at the building, battering its walls to tear them down. He watches blows pummel the door and realizes the extinguisher's smoke won't buy them an escape, so he spits a curse at Grandale, then a hook lashes out and snags the roof's edge. Ropes haul several knights up onto the rooftop, and he reels, stunned that so many people showed up just for him. A knight rears up and drives his blade down in a savage top-to-bottom strike, and the main character sees it and knows in an instant they're in deep trouble. Standing on the rock, the girls buzz with excitement but keep glancing toward Kannata. Tamaki's sure he's fine. After all, he single-handedly defeated Kadis. He spots the knight smashing the building again, alarm flaring as he knows this is bad, and yanks a fire extinguisher into his hands with a stone-cold face. Then the system pings. 24-hour store hero level increased. A grin lights his face as he realizes he seems to have gained experience from the knights. Advantage locked in. He lifts a hand, smiling, and activates the status check. The status roars his profile. His only skill is a level 5 shop. His stats read Stamina 8, Strength 8, Agility 6, Magic 0, Luck 8. He has no mastered spells or skills. His title blazes. Legendary Earth Dragon Slayer. The main character lit up and whooped when he spotted lunchboxes and a microwave. This is amazing. Then his grin crumpled as he stared, utterly bewildered by what he saw. Kannata drops into his chair, stares at the screen, and realizes the store is listing things that shouldn't exist. He tells himself it's a mistake, because drones and machine guns ringed by glowing magical barriers look terrifyingly out of place. HE's face hardens as he pummels the mouse, clicking and dragging until the cursor slams onto the icon of 5 Gatling machine guns. He knows now isn't the time to hesitate. He has to try this. A metallic snarl split the air as 2 machine guns erupted onto the roof. The knights gaped in bewilderment. They were 2 5-shot automatic Gatling guns, set to stop any intrusion into the building. He gapes, voice raw, "Is this normal? A Gatling like that would obliterate a world of swords and magic. It doesn't belong here. How is this possible?" Blank flashes on the impact machine gun. Kannata doubts his theory, resolves to test it, and when the system asks to start automatic mode, he moves the cursor and clicks yes with the mouse. Rooftop machine guns erupted into life, cutting down several knights in an instant, and one knight's horse, terrified by the ambush, reared in panic. The knights lie sprawled on the ground, alive but utterly drained, writhing and moaning. The protagonist grins as he realizes it isn't lethal and can be used safely, then leans in to look, and whatever he sees makes him gasp in surprise. He locks onto the magazine rotation icon on his screen and slams it, mind racing to decode what it means, while the knights on the roof spot motion below, freeze, and wonder what this is this time. In a heartbeat, the whole store lurched into a dizzying spin, sending the knights on the roof scrambling and sliding to keep their footing as the crowd below gaped, frozen in stunned silence. 2 knights watch reeled as a comrade hurtled from the roof, crashing down and screaming right at their feet. He flashes a grin and declares nothing can surprise him anymore, then cracks up, baffled that the magazine can even spin, smiles again, yanks the machine gun back into his hands, and the magazine starts to whirl. Machine guns on the roof open fire again, spraying the knights by the store. Some sprint for cover while others immediately crumple to the ground. The knights cry, "What kind of building is this? They weren't warned and don't know what to do." The commander-in-chief, one of the knights, roared that Lord Drake, Grandale's prime minister, had entrusted them with this mission. They mustn't return until they've succeeded, so march out and crush your fear. Kannata's mind raced, wondering who Drake really is. He glares at the computer, sees their morale crumble, and snatches his chance to bolt. He clicks, banking on the store's gear to make the escape work, then steels himself to try a new tactic. Kannata flips the drones into smokescreen mode. Several roar out, hover above the store, then vomit a choking cloud into the night that has passers-by gagging and coughing. He bursts from the building into a choking cloud, clamps a hand over mouth and nose, knows this is his chance. Knights cough and collapse as he bolts away and disappears into the forest. They pressed right up to him and burst into triumphant cheers, shouting that he was their hero for coming. Gasping, the protagonist snaps to Tamaki she should have gone ahead. A man drapes a robe over the guy. The girl says she thought it through, realized he never learned to ride a horse so he can't handle it alone, and she'll slip in stealthily if needed. The girl vaults onto the horse and yells for the guy to climb faster, but he groans he can't. He can barely move. Then Zariel snaps at them to hurry up. Tamaki's protagonist spun to the man with a bright grin, and Kannata stepped forward, thanking him with raw, earnest gratitude for his help. Zariel winks, thanks the man in person for letting him rake in all that money, and vows that if they're still alive, they'll definitely cross paths again somehow. The man yells good luck. As the horse bolts into a gallop, Tamaki and Kannata flinch, terrified by the sudden surge. The guy looks back grinning and shouts his thanks while asking them to tell everyone in the city hello, and the girl stares at the road, frozen with fear. He kept a vigilant watch over them for a long while, waving with a steady hand as his white horse stood loyally by. Moments before the legendary earth dragon Kadis was torn apart beneath the glaring daytime sky over the kingdom of Grandale. In the great hall, a girl throws her arms wide, thanking them for braving the long road from the west, then flashes a bright smile and asks how she can help. The boy kneeling before her warns that the Demon Lord's army is closing in on the Western Alliance. He's Karl Gensteiner, an envoy from Carteros, one of the Western Alliance's countries. He spits that they're barely keeping on their feet, then drops that demons, thinking magic-wielding monsters, have just been confirmed. The knights trade tense looks until a single cough snaps them to their feet. Smiling, she vows to pour generous support, soldiers and supplies, into their country and orders 10,000 troops to deploy to the expeditionary force immediately. Carlton's jaw drops at the number, and he admits the whispers of her grace were true. The girl vows to shoulder her nation's mantle and charge into battle against the Demon King alongside them, but she slips in a crucial caveat. His face stone cold, he demanded of the girl, "Can our newly summoned heroes actually help us?" Someone beside the girl gasped that, tragically, the heroes from another world can't stand against the Demon Lord's army. The fair-haired guy sits, a grin splitting his face, and proclaims that very soon they'll have the chance to show their abilities. She nods sharply, confirms everything's right, and tells him to hang on a little longer. The guy's locked onto something. He sits jaw clenched, replaying how in recent years she lost both parents to a string of strange illnesses, how she, despite her youth, inherited the throne, how the West now hails her political skill, and his blood boils. The fair-haired man snapped, "That's enough, let him calm his rulers down," and a respectful man stepped forward, voice steady, asked, "Who are you?" then quickly apologized for not introducing himself yet. The guy proclaims he was summoned from another world 6 months ago, beams that he's glad to meet them, declares himself Kuramachi Yudo, a hero gifted with immortality, and the guy stares, stunned. Still kneeling, Carlgan stares up at Yudo and fires the question, "Are you a brave warrior from another world?" If he is, Carlgan will forgive his rudeness. Yudo flashes a grin and admits it's practically a military secret. His hand-picked squad already razed the goblin's eastern lair and smashed the lizard's den, and he remembers every brutal second. The day to finally grant their wish nears. Carlgan, dazed and shaking, blurts he can't believe it, and the lizard's destruction was a jaw-dropping feat. Carlton brims with confidence, sure they'll deliver a solid report to the 3 countries. He thanks the audience, rises, and bows. The guy storms out of the room. The girl spins to Yudo and asks, "Are you okay?" Yudo springs to his feet and shoots back, "Yes, I'm fine," while thinking the noisy Western Alliance at least needs a proper report on the heroes. Yudo cups her chin and pleads with a steady voice, "Trust me, listen to me, and everything will be fine." She lays her hand on his, cheeks burning, and shyly promises she'll do exactly as he says. Out of nowhere, someone cuts them off, bursts into the hall, and bellows for His Majesty Kuramachi Yudo. An elderly man in a headdress steps forward and declares he has something to tell them. The girl freezes in shock. It's Prime Minister Drake, and Yudo, voice steady, asks the man what the matter is. He recounts how the news slammed into them. A a hero from another world, calling himself the convenience store hero, had slain the legendary Earth Dragon in the western autonomous region of Kadina. Shock ripped through the girl and Yudo when she cried that the convenience store hero had slain the dragon. No, that can't be. She bursts out, eyes alight. Didn't he claim he was a villain who committed evil while masquerading as a hero? Why did they turn on him like that? She'd heard he endured horrific suffering and still lives haunted by regret. She whirls on Yudo, eyes blazing. Is it true you killed the Earth Dragon? Are you a monster who'd do that? Yudo lifts a hand, steady as a rock. Breathe. It's not that simple. This could be a planted lie to trick us. She screamed at the Prime Minister, demanding a search party for Kadna be sent at once. Before she could finish, Yudo reached out, ordered her to sleep, and her vision blurred as consciousness slipped away. She slumbers atop her throne as he lets out a weary sigh and warns that people without self-control are a real threat to the country. She's so naive he thinks she can't grasp why a lie is sometimes necessary. She's still young. The Prime Minister snaps at Yudo, accusing him of putting her to sleep again and branding him a bad man. A guy ignores the attack and turns to the man, demanding, "Is that true?" Rumor tore through Kadna's stalls. Every merchant swore the hero came from that little shop and they were dead certain. Yudo grinned and asked, "If all you have is a shop and no fighting skill, how did you pull that off?" He couldn't imagine what kind of monster this legendary Earth Dragon was, but he pictured Tamaki, the deputy headman and one of the chosen, right at his side, throwing himself into the fight to pull him through. She's hiding on the very edge of the city. She could prove everything to them, so they'll silence her, stage a monster's killing, and march to the queen boasting their theory was right. He pleads with the Prime Minister to unleash a strike team immediately, and the Prime Minister nods, green-lighting the order. He agrees to his order. The system board flashes his name, Drake, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Grandale, branded the usurper, bearer of the titles Killed Crusade and Parents with a Spell. He named the young girl heir, and now plots to seize the kingdom's achievements. Yudo grins, certain he deserves the title usurper, a perfect pawn. He brainwashed the queen with his skills, and with his advanced appraisal magic control is sealed. Drake lunges at Yudo, demanding what's going on with Assassin's heroine. Yudo coolly brushes him off and swears he'll deal with her himself. Unlike the store's incompetent hero, pinning her down is no challenge. Someone's tucked behind a column, and the man drops to his knees, begging forgiveness. Yudo locks his gaze on the pillar, voice hard as he snaps that eavesdropping won't do, and declares she's Shiori. The girl steps out from behind the column and plants herself before the guy, a sword resting at her back. She confesses she just showed up and didn't hear a thing. He steps forward to meet her, and Shiori, grinning slyly, teases him, afraid I'll overhear something unnecessary. He scoffs, admits he doesn't care, then insists she should be more accommodating. They're classmates, after all, and when he presses her she mutters a sullen apology, stiff with indifference because she truly doesn't care. She plants herself squarely in front of him and declares he's not plotting against their mission, and Yudo snaps back that of course. As headman, he puts everyone's safety first. They crushed the Dark Lord and came home alive. He scoffs, they tell him it's amazing. He admits he'd been sick with worry for them, but they're all okay and it's absolutely incredible. She smirks, taunting that they can strike back where others can't, and Yudo's smile stays calm as he says that, as a hero serving this country, he's bound to obey orders and wants her to stop acting selfishly. She sighs in displeasure. She spins to Yudo and fires the question, what level are the chosen group's members at now? He replies bluntly that everyone's at level 3 and stronger than before, and she lets it sink in. She flashed all 5 fingers and declared, we're at level 5, going solo will be far more effective, leaving him stunned and confused as she walked off and announced the legendary Earth Dragon has been killed. She lit up and proclaimed the Earth's legendary dragon an irresistible quest, demanded to join, snapped that she wanted to know his current level, and vowed she wouldn't let him pull ahead. She skips forward, grin bright and heart hopeful that she might meet him somewhere, when 2 knights step out from around the corner. Seeing he's bound for Kadna, she fixes a solemn mask as they snap to attention and thank her for the work done. The queen's eyes snap open and she stares straight ahead. Yudo clamps the girl's chin and asks if she's okay. She blurts out whether she slept. The store's hero suddenly flashes into her memory, and she knows she must find out what's there. The guy tells her to listen carefully. He drops a bombshell. The store's hero was actually a servant of the Dark Lord who terrorized the city. That's why she banished him from the kingdom. The girl stares, eyes wide, and he asks, am I right? She smiles sweetly and nods, and he realizes he must crank his charm magic up a notch. It'll take time, so he steels himself to try, flashing a sarcastic grin as he asks the queen if he's thinking correctly. A parade of mouthwatering dishes filled the table as the main character, and 2 girls pressed their palms together, beaming, and cried bon appetit. She swears the yakiniku lunchbox is the best. He He never imagined he'd be sinking his teeth into steaming lunchboxes in another world, a huge leap from when he survived on 2 onigiri and tea. Tamaki shoves a bite into her mouth and blurts she wants to sneak out behind the store. The guy scoffs and tells her he doesn't think he needs her that much. Roughly 5 days out from the city of Kadna, they thunder west toward a distant land outside Grandale's reach, spurring their horses onward. They score food, clothing, and shelter straight from the store, gliding past cities without leaving a trace. The main character beams and says it's unbelievably convenient. His shop surged to level 5 and he stood armed, the perfect shop he'd imagined struck through. He couldn't have pictured this brutal twist, but at least he came out stronger. Goods and objects were piled in like a tsunami, an avalanche of everything. Tamaki snatched one up, the second girl stared at something, then spun to Kannata. She confesses she has no clue how to put the underwear on and begs him to explain. Cheeks flaming, she glances back. Tamaki materializes behind her, seizes her arm, pulls her aside and declares she'll teach her. Even more astonishing wonders materialized for them, and for those who'd come from another world, and every eye widened, locking onto a single box. Magazines, manga, novels, photo collections, straight from another world exploded into being, and every piece of reading material from the modern world had suddenly appeared. He could order only one type a day, random issues popped up out of nowhere, and he grimaced as the brutal truth sank in. Finishing the whole run would take years. Tamaki's eyes narrowed as he grabbed the guy and demanded if this could really be their world. Something felt wrong. The protagonist admitted the details matched, but blurted, could this be a parallel world? His face goes stone cold as realization hits. There's absolutely no information, no leads, about their class's disappearance. Tina gasped and peppered us with wide-eyed questions about magical tech and bustling public spots, cinemas, game consoles, household appliances, amusement parks, things she's never seen, and her pure joy makes everything feel perfect. Tina flips a magazine, eyes wide, declaring the Book of Women in strange poses, really interesting, good recommendations, while Tamaki snaps at the guy who ordered it, since that otherworldly photo collection was banned from day one. If they press on, they'll plunge into the alliance of the 3 Western Kingdoms territory, and the girls press again, firing urgent questions about the alliance. Tina smiles and says these countries face constant invasion from the Dark Lord's army, so they've pledged to stand together. This land is a frontline, not like Grandale to the east. To get there, you have to cross the Dark Lord's Gorge. The main character's jaw drops, eyes wide with stunned disbelief. The protagonist blurts out if they're talking about a castle and insists he's not ready, and Tamaki snaps there's no castle, it's just a name, and orders him to study this point. Tina flashes a grin and declares that, just as Tamaki said, the Dark Lord's castle sits on his territory far to the west of the 3-country alliance. A guy snaps at Tamaki not to swell with pride, and Tina soaks in the moment, utterly pleased with herself. Dark Lord's Gorge harbors the lair and graveyard of colossal monsters that served the Dark Lord, who once ruled the entire world in ancient times. The Dark Lord's curse dooms anyone who plummets to the gorge's depths to lose all choice, and Tamaki reels as terror snaps through him. Tina fires back that it covers monsters too, but merchants stick to safe, well-worn routes so they can sleep easy. He exhales, relief washing over him, and admits it sounds encouraging. He folds into his chair, voice low and tight, and murmurs, even if we take down the current Dark Lord, could he come back? Tamaki admits, yeah, it's possible. What else can we do? And Tina goes pale, collapsing into sudden, hollow despair. She bursts out to her friends, confessing she knows something, her voice trembling as she admits she might be wrong and has no proof. She leans in and reveals that in this world a book called Forbidden Knowledge exists, but it's buried so deep it's nearly impossible to find, and the protagonist and Tamaki stare, stunned. Tina says people whisper the church hauled those forbidden books to the pyre and reduced them to ash so no one could ever read them. Even as a child, she stumbled into Kadna's underground library, unearthed a forbidden book, snatched it up out of pure curiosity, and as she read, shock tore through her. Tina's worried face cracks as she hurls a bombshell. The Dark Lord ravaging this world was forged by heroes summoned from another world, and the protagonist and Tamaki stagger back, jaws dropping. Tamaki yelps with excitement, asking if that means they become Dark Lords, and the guy says bluntly, to beat a Dark Lord you summon heroes from another world, and those heroes end up becoming the new lords, trapping everyone in a never-ending cycle. She shut her eyes and whispered that, though we can't confirm it now, rumors say some heroes summoned from other worlds, those with certain abilities, are destined to become Dark Lords. The ancients knew the score. Whenever someone with those powers showed up the moment a hero was summoned, they launched a swift hunt to snuff him out. Tamaki flashes a smile and asks if they're okay, if no one will dare lay a hand on them. The protagonist's blood runs cold imagining this very hero could twist into a dark lord. Only Yudo Kuramachi bursts into his mind, the man's face burning vivid, and he knows he won't be the last ruler. He jabbed a finger at the glowing sigils and barked at Tina, "Read what's written on these abilities, and tell me what they're meant to become." She reports this fragment is ruined, but the text screams these are unique abilities, nothing like any other heroes, and you can see the worry eating at her. The main character declares his shop special, if you can even call it that, yet every glance shows not a single hint of a dark lord. He hissed that the defenses were dangerous and pointless, but Tamaki's eyes snapped open, and she yelled they also bring steaming hot lunches and decadent sweets, and they rescue the inhabitants of the outer wall. He grins and teases that she's far too bubbly and clumsy to be an assassin. She freezes, stunned, and chokes out, "Could you praise me?" Tina swoops in, grabs the girl, and beams that Tamaki is an adorable, kind-hearted hero she utterly adores. The protagonist watches with a sour glare, and when a guy asks Tina if he can ask one more question, she nods and says yes. Kannata demands to know if those otherworld heroes, after crushing the Lord, ever make it back to their home, and the girl narrows her eyes, weighing his question with grave intensity. Worry nods her voice as she says the legends fall eerily silent about what came next. One version claims some never leave this world, living the same ordinary days until their final day. In this world, people with powers almost never appear. Only when the blood of distant heroes ignites in their veins do they emerge, and she is that newborn. Her words snap into place, the girl's face floods back, and a cold doubt claws at her. Was everything Crusade said a lie? Kannata revealed that Queen Grandale spoke of a mighty magic that can send the heroes back to their home world. Tina presses him about the queen, admits she knows nothing, and pleads for forgiveness. Grandale stands proud, having summoned heroes since ancient times. She might have smuggled in secret magic from another world that nobody there suspects. The protagonist snaps, like I said, "Now we must defeat the Dark Lord," Tamaki stammers, shaken that this is the whole plan and a little scared, and suddenly Tina spins to face Kannata and Tamaki at once. She pins her gaze on her two friends, worry clawing at her voice as she pleads, "If we defeat the Dark Lord, will you both return to your original world?" They both freeze, stunned. A jolt of memory hits them. They suddenly remember they wanted to return home, and in that instant the girl clamps both hands over her mouth. She lets her hands fall, clutches the last of her composure, and pleads for forgiveness from the two seated before her. She snaps, "Is this exactly why we're moving now? First, they must bolt straight toward the alliance of the three Western countries." The protagonist and Tamaki lock eyes on the girl, weighing her in silence. When it's time to leave, Tamaki rushes to help Tina while the protagonist's mind churns. Curiosity detonated inside him. He burned to know what the heroes before him were thinking, and when those heroes stood on the brink of choice, he tilted his head up to the sky. They pressed onward, weeks grinding past, until they finally stood before the Dark Lord's ravine, a weathered signpost planted like a dare at its edge. The whole group gaped, the gorge's bottom vanishes into black, and the thought of demons down there chills them to the bone. These demons served the Dark Lord in ancient times and survived, towering as huge as Kadis or even bigger. The main character can't deny it. The Dark Lord who once controlled them was probably a total badass, way cooler than Kadis. He grills Tina about how he was defeated, and she admits the ancient tomes are silent on it, so she's just as eager to uncover the truth. He blurts that he heard about this in hero training class, then spins around to find Tamaki and her horse vanished. He yells, "Where is she?" as cold shock floods him. Tina says that, as far as she remembers, Tamaki said she'd go on reconnaissance. Tina pleaded with her to be careful. The guy brushed it off, and now he's snapping at Tina, asking if she's serious. Displeasure boils in him as he realizes she's been doing her own thing for ages, and memories slam into him. She kept ditching him and their friend to chase the cat or grab a bite. He promises he'll go find her and tells Tina to rest for now. She nods, urges them to be careful, then gives a quick wave to the girl who stayed with the horse. The main character pressed forward along the gorge, eyes sweeping the cliffs, then something in the shadows snagged their gaze. He spots the silhouette and realizes it's her. Relief surges that she didn't wander far from them, then something suddenly hits him and he reels. He gapes baffled as a girl slams her fists against an invisible wall, tears and screams shredding the air. Someone laughs and says he's alive, and he just stands there silent, watching it all. Two more figures hover by the girl encased in a cone of crystal, and the man on the right grins at Kannata, says they haven't seen each other in ages, and dubs him the guy from the store. The main character freezes, sinking into a stupor the instant he recognizes Kanamorei and Natori Mitsuki. The girl with glasses is a shield mage, planted like a living bulwark with a stone-cold, serious stare. Kannata thinks she's a harmless, glasses-clad wallflower, but she's actually a stalker who worships Kuramachi and has been lurking around the corner, watching his every move. They both leveled icy glares at the boy, and the truth slammed into him. They're just two glasses-clad, submissive servants, and even Mitsuki is one of them. Kanamorei says a wide protective field can blanket an area to pinpoint a single person or an entire group, then seal them in a barrier that cages them and crushes their abilities. He snaps at the protagonist, surprised, and Mitsuki instantly erupts with white-hot anger directed at him. Tamaki, locked up, stares at the two in confused silence, and the protagonist realizes she's furious. Then it clicks. This is Mitsuki's ability. Kanamorei reports they've already seized the vice president, and Tamaki's face drains as worry claws at his chest. Kanamorei roars that he's Grandale's biggest criminal, swears he'll make Kannata answer to justice, then flashes a revolting grin and jabs a finger at the protagonist. The protagonist explodes, shouting he was falsely accused. The man sneers, "I'm shaking, every criminal says that," and the protagonist snaps, "What kind of justice is this, taking hostages?" Rage flashes across the man's face. Kanamorei throws down a grim challenge. Don't let the crushing water drag you to the bottom, dodge and win, and they might free the girl locked away, so the protagonist sizes up the offer. Kanamorei lunges and unleashes Darkwater Stream. A colossal torrent of water hurtles straight at the protagonist. Tina curls into herself, memories of her partners crashing over her, every laugh, every scar, and a bitter thought claws at her. If they topple the Dark Lord, she'll have to say goodbye to both of them. She perches beside her horse as it chews the grass. A sudden rush of water slams into her ears, and panic explodes. Her fear for Kannata and Tamaki surges. A sudden, earth-shaking rumble hits. Both of the main characters' enemies flinch in shock, spot the main character's store materializing right in front of them, and stand utterly perplexed. A thunderous wall of water rips into the store, fanning out to both sides, while the main character stands completely unscathed. The bespectacled man storms up and snarls at Kannata, "Did you use my shop as a shield?" The hero smiles, apologizes to Kanamorei, lifts his hand, and vows he's not the same man he was then. Kanamorei stands there, fury flaring in his chest. Tamaki watches and begins reveling in his success. The glasses-wearing man snaps that it irritates him, and the protagonist is left utterly perplexed. Kanamorei slams his hand up in fury and snarls that the guy's smug face is an eyesore. The guy has no clue what Kanamorei is about to do. Out of nowhere, Kanamorei falls silent and goes stone still. The main character snaps upright, covering himself with his hands. They freeze in a stretched, breathless silence while the main character fixes his gaze on something, watching it with razor focus. Out of nowhere, Kanamorei erupts into a violent coughing fit, writhing as he crumples to his knees. The girl beside him spins to her partner, eyes wide with confusion, and Kannata shouts, "What's going on?" The bespectacled man stomps forward, furious, barking, "What did you just do to me?" His breath catching in ragged, panicked gasps. The main character stands stunned because he did nothing. Someone turns to Kannata and Tamaki, and the man snaps his gaze back. It's Tina. She locks eyes with the main character, excitement practically exploding from her. The guy's jaw drops at her sudden arrival, and Kanamorei flashes a sickening grin as he stares at the girl. He snaps, "Is she in on this too?" Water beads and swells at the guy's hand, and the main character's eyes lock on it. Kannata screams at the girl to get out of here, but Kanamorei laughs, cold and smug. Too late, he's unleashing the dark water flow again. He tore toward her to help. She froze, eyes wide, as he lunged forward, arm outstretched, and shouted her name. She topples off the cliff. He bolts after her and snatches her midair. They plummet into the abyss together. He glares down with a stone face, then suddenly erupts into a raw, desperate scream. Then memories slam into the main character, and he begins to relive his life in the big city. He remembers the girl in front of him waving and saying good morning, the guy next to her wishing him the same. He rips off his headphones and answers back. Tamaki spots the sign, and her grin bursts across her face as she brightly suggests they go there after school. He blinks and lands in his classroom, classmates beaming as they trade bright, cheerful good mornings. Some clustered jabbering and laughing, others hunched over their phones, thumbs flying. A few got lost in books, and some lay sprawled, fast asleep. A tall blonde bursts into the classroom, declaring the morning meeting will start the moment the teacher walks in and urging everyone to take their seats, something cradled in his arms. The office hums with a strange energy. Everyone snaps to attention, staring and wondering what it is. Then a scream rips through the room. He groans in his sleep, barely cracks his eyes open, lies back and stares up, sure he just drifted through a warm dream from his past. He gapes at a ragged hole torn in the ceiling and wonders if the store just saved him. Then his eyes land on Tina, sprawled there and out cold. He blurted in surprise, "Are you okay?" She snapped awake and flailing smacked the main character square in the face. He clutched his cheek and groaned, "I'm in pain," and she stared at him, utterly bewildered. She spins to Kannata, voice cracking, "I'm sorry, it's all because I was there." Kannata narrows one eye and says, "I dragged you into this." He suddenly swept her into a tight hug. She froze, eyes wide, and he blurted that he was so relieved she was okay, admitting he was truly, wildly happy. In an instant, serenity settled over her face, a bright smile blooming as she hugged him back and burst into tears of joy. They both spring up as the girl snaps at Kannata asking where they are, and when the protagonist peers outside he realizes, at the very bottom of Demon Valley, shadowy silhouettes of monsters writhe in the gloom. They pick their way across the rocks together, sidestep a lurking monster, he rings his shop, and Tina glances back with worry carved into her face. They bolt down the stairs as he rushes ahead, proclaiming this is his underground shelter. He'd known they'd added something new, yet the interior mirrors the Kameni office. The protagonist plants himself at the computer, convinced a colossal thing prowls outside, so he stays put, safer here than in the upper office. She nods, so he decides to scout the surroundings first, taps the drone icon, and sends the drone darting out of the building. Suddenly, a massive dragon blotted out the sky. The girl cried, "Is that Kad's?" Kannata shook his head. "No, this thing is much bigger than the one I defeated in Kadina City, and its color's different. Maybe it's a subspecies." Not a lone dragon, several of them loom, and the serious-faced man instantly knows. They're at the bottom of Demon Valley. Her eyes snap to the screen, and she yells at the guy, jabbing a finger as a round creature barrels straight toward them. He reels in horror as the creature plows straight through the shop and leaves nothing behind. His jaw drops when he sees their store blown to pieces, and the girl stands frozen in terror. She whirls and demands, "Then why wasn't the shelter damaged?" The protagonist's gaze snaps to that same untouched spot. He says that when the store collapsed, not a tremor or sound reached them. It felt like this place folded into its own pocket of space apart from the shop, and the room around them was drowned in absolute pitch black. He thinks the mechanic is odd, but he's relieved it's there. A gut feeling says the Kombini is bulking up, readying itself for the trouble barreling toward them. Kannata grits their teeth and rockets skyward, daring to push until they discover exactly how far they can climb. The drone soars upward 200 meters, 300, 400, 1,000, 2,000, then blasts off to 4 million meters. I shout the depth here is alarmingly deep. The girl gasps she can see light. Then an explosion rips the scene and the drone camera's image dies, leaving us both stunned. Her heart seized. Is this the exact demon curse Tyke warned about, the one that drags you to the bottom and never lets you claw your way back out? She insists it's her first time seeing this, but farther ahead, a crackling, powerful magical barrier has been erected. They choke out, "Does this mean we'll never escape this valley?" And the monitor glares back, "No signal at all." The main character and the girl lunged forward, shock electrifying their steps as a guy screamed at Tina to run faster, terror tightening its grip on her. Kannata roars Tina lightning dash. She snaps to it and rockets off. The guy bellows for the shop to come. A storefront materializes before them, and they smash through its doors with a titanic dragon snapping at their heels. The girl screams at the guy to hurry up, and the main character thrusts his hand out into the unknown. The next heartbeat, the dragon's clawed paw ripped through the store's walls, splintering them and piercing everything in its path. He hurtles down the stairs but still grins, convinced their move to that seemingly better place was the right call. Tina screams but cannot say his name. He sprawls on the floor, sure this whole thing is an utterly impossible game. The dragon gapes at the door planted on its claw. Kannata reports they've properly restocked supplies. The protagonist's ears catch a faint squeak as a system chimes that the store level has increased. He stands there stunned. The notification pings again and again, and every chime steals his breath. He expected one, not 4 in a row. Tina stares at the guy, utterly bewildered. He admits his level just shot up by 4, and Tina, giddy with delight, whoops that this is absolutely incredible. She leans in, eyes hungry for answers, and asks the guy if there's any news. The main character thrusts his hand up to check the status. A table erupts into view, piled with newly added products and household goods. The main character's jaw drops as the assortment now looks exactly like a real store, and Tina gasps in astonishment too. Triumph lights his face, but they don't need food now. Of all their solid possessions, there's only one shower, and he slips into it, mapping the bunker's layout in his mind. He barked at her, "Are you offering me a choice from the bottom of this abyss? Where's the powerful weapon? Our shop's already teetering on the verge of destruction." Kannata slams his fist under the table and buries his face in his hands, choking out an apology to Tina as he admits he might not be able to save her. Utterly powerless, he watches the girl beg him not to lose his mind. She squeezes his hand, beaming as she says they could really use a shower too, and assures him she's happy and everything's fine, and he freezes in surprise and says her name. Grinning, she presses a stack of sandwiches and a thermos of steaming tea into his hands. When the protagonist asks if there's anything to eat in this situation, she laughs and says that's exactly why she came loaded with a whole spread of different food. Tina beams and urges him to calm down and think with her. A quick meal clears their heads and floods them with good ideas, and even at the bottom of the gorge being together feels bearable, so they rally and move forward while the main character flushes with embarrassment. He grabs Tina, admits she's right and yells that it's way too early to give up, thanks her for always supporting her, and Tina tells him she's glad he's in a good mood again. Her smile exploded as she confessed they'd gone so long without being alone, and he snapped, "What did you just say?" From that day on they holed up in an underground shelter, living as recluses, and the girl stood under the shower as water pounded over her. They'd weathered wave after wave of attacks and defenses, and after it all his level had climbed by only one, he seized.